Good afternoon. Welcome to this session on storytelling. In this, we talk about the importance of saving endangered stories. This session is about preserving the stories created and narrated by our grandparents that may get lost in this tech-dominated audiovisual world. And in this session, 5 grandparents narrate stories to their grandchildren. We have 5 storytellers with us, grandparent storytellers, and some of them are accompanied by their grandchildren as well. Parvati Kundalik Pol from Satara, Maharashtra, 68 years old, and her story is Chimutai Chimutai Dar Ughad in Marathi. Then we have Dr. Shobha Tiwari from Bilaspur, 69 years. Her story is in Hindi, Natkhat Ladka. We have Saraswati from Delhi, 71 years, and she relates a story in Kannada, Proud Hen and Granny. We have Suresh Bhargava from Delhi, 72 years, and in Hindi, he will talk about the 2 princes. And finally, we have Kaur Suryalata from our own Hyderabad, 60 years, and the name of her story is Parahitam in Telugu. Talking to them is Megh Risaldar. Megh Risaldar is a passionate New Age HR leader with a knack for winning hearts and adding value to business. The business leaders he has worked with value his passion for people, creativity, employee experience management, and change management. After a brief entrepreneurial stint, futuristic business model and founder's passion drove him to join Screen Magic Mobile Media in January 2021 as head human resources. He also is closely associated with Food for Thought Foundation, which has organized this event. Over to you, Megh.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kendra, for the kind introduction, and to HLF for giving us these wonderful opportunities. Stories have played really a big role in all of our lives. At Food for Thought, we believe that the strength of our long-lasting culture are the ethos, which are actually passed on through generations through the stories. But nowadays, as Dr. Kinera said, with the new age internet, technology, gadgets, and to add to that, the nuclear families in our fast-paced life, the stories are actually losing the space in our life. And that drove the Food for Thought Foundation to partner with HLF to come with this wonderful project called Save Endangered Stories, so that we preserve these stories, spread them, distribute them to pass on the legacy. Before I move to this wonderful grandparents to sort of listen to their stories, which are recorded, and I'm also going to have a dialogue with these grandparents. I wish to tell you about my own, introduction to stories happened through my grandfather, who set the benchmark in early 70s. So I was born in 71, and apart from Mahabharata, Ramayana, or a Panchatantra, my grandfather adopted a very innovative approach of narrating stories to me. And that is, his stories typically would have a pause sometime in the time just before lunch. And he would stop at a juncture and say, okay, now kids, I'm taking a break. We'll meet at the evening. And he would expect us to predict the end of the story. And believe you me, that is something that really instilled the role of creativity and imagination. I can't stress enough. I think as kids, I still remember me and my cousins, I live in a joint family. We used to actually brainstorm and think about the possible ends to the story, and eagerly waiting for the sun to set, and when my grandfather would tell us actually what was the end of the story. And it was wonderful. He used to listen to the predictions from our side and then narrate his own end of the story. So is importance of stories in our life, and I'm sure all of you listeners have your own stories and your own versions. Now, to begin our journey today on this platform, as Dr. Kinra said, we have 5 grandparents. We would like to begin our today's journey with a Marathi story, and soon you will listen to the recording. As it is in Marathi, I would love to tell you a bit more about this story. One of the most fascinating pair in our childhood stories has been sparrow and a crow pair, right? Now, before we hear this story from Granny Parvati, one disclaimer, that is based on the region you belong to. If you understand Marathi, you would see that this story has different ends based on which part of the region you belong to and what you heard in this story. Without a listen from Granny Parvati ji, see what kind of lesson Crow learned in this lovely story. Let's hear the Marathi story now.
एक सांगणार आहे. एक कावळा असतो, एक चिमुकली असती. मग एक त्याचं घर असतं शेणाचं आणि चिमणीचं घर असतं मेणाचं. मग पाऊस येतो मोठा, मग कावळ्याचं घर जातं वाहून आणि चिमणीचं घर राहतं. मग कावळा म्हणतो चिमुताय दार उघड. मग ती म्हणती थांब माझ्या बाळाला आंघोळ घालू दे. हा, मग परत ती थांबतो. परत म्हणती चिमुताय दार उघड. ती म्हणती थांब माझ्या बाळाला कपडे घालू दे. चिमुताय दार उघड. तर ती म्हणती थांब माझ्या बाळाला गन पावडर करू दे. मग पुढे म्हणतो चिमुताय दार उघड. तर ती म्हणती थांब माझ्या बाळाला दूध पाजू दे. मग परत म्हणतो चिमुताय दार उघड. मग ती म्हणती थांब माझ्या बाळाला झोपू दे. मग परत चिमुताय दार उघड. मग ती दार उघडती. मग त्याला भूक लागलेली असती. मग वाटीत खीर असते. मग ती कावळा खीर खातो आणि मग पातेलं उघडून बघतो, त्यात पण खीर असते. मग ती खीर ती पण खातो.
म्हणजे ते पातेल्यातली आणि वाटीतली सुद्धा खीर
खातो. आणि मग चिमुताई म्हणती सगळी संपवली खीर. आणि मग ती काय करती, लाकूड घेते चुलीतलं आणि त्याला शिपटीला भाजवतो. आणि आज आपल्याला ह्या गोष्टीपासून काय शिकाय मिळालं?
कावळ्याने विचार करताना दूरदृष्टीचा विचार करायला पाहिजे होता. आणि त्याने चिमुताईच्या बाळाची खीर सुद्धा खायला नको होती. ती बाळाला ठेवायची, चिमुताईच्या बाळाला ठेवायला पाहिजे होती. आणि त्यांनी घर बांधतानाच शेणाचं नाही तर टिकणार आणि टिकाऊ घर त्यांनी बांधायला पाहिजे होतं. थँक्यू.
पार्वती आजी, मला तुमच्याशी बोलायचं होतं. खूप छान स्टोरी सांगितली तुम्ही. मला सांगा, जी स्टोरी सगळ्यांनी ऐकली, आम्हा सगळ्यांना माहिती आहे की पक्षी तर बोलू शकत नाही, कावळा आणि चिमणी बोलू शकत नाही. मग पोरांना कावळ्या चिमणीची गोष्ट आवडते की राजा राणीची गोष्ट आवडते?
बोलू शकत नसली तरी मुलांना गोष्ट आवडती. म्हणजे मी सांगितल्यानंतर मुलं शिकतात.
मग पोरांना पक्ष्यांची जास्त आवडते की राजा राणीची
हा.
गोष्ट जास्त आवडते?
पक्षाचीच गोष्ट मुलांना आवडती, म्हणजे लवकर शिकतात.
वा वा, धन्यवाद पार्वती आजी. अशाच स्टोरी सांगत राहा. आणि स्टोरींनी मी स्वतः एक नातू म्हणून आजीकडनं आणि आमच्या आजोबाकडनं फार शिकलो आहे. तर फार फार धन्यवाद तुम्ही जॉईन केल्याबद्दल. आणि अशाच आम्हाला स्टोरी सांगत राहा. धन्यवाद. For the benefit of audience, I was asking
धन्यवाद.
Granny Parvati ji about when she was narrating stories about a crow and a sparrow. I was asking her that sparrow or a crow can't speak. So don't your grandkids, children insist on stories about the king and a queen. And I think she gave a very wonderful answer that her grandchildren actually prefer crow and a sparrow, because even though they can't speak, they give a very important lessons and learnings. With that, ladies and gentlemen, let's continue our journey of stories now.
Just a minute, Megh.
Yes,
I think people want to know what is the gist of our story.
Okay, so gist of the story is, it was raining heavily, and the crow comes to the sparrow's house and knocks on the door, saying, "It's raining heavily. I need a shelter." And that is because sparrow was actually very foresighted. She had built her house with a wax, whereas crow did not use that material, and his house actually flew away due to the heavy storm and rain. So when the crow knocks on the door, sparrow actually gets him inside, and guess what? Crow acts smart, and he says that, "I'm feeling a bit hungry. Can you give me some food?" And sparrow says, "Okay." So sparrow offers her, one sweet dish that she had prepared. Now crow gets a little greedy. In a minute, says, okay, he can see a big utensils where it was stored. Say, "Can I have some more?" And he goes on without even listening to, sparrow's yes. He jumps onto that pot and starts eating the whole dessert. And sparrow actually sees that crow is acting smart now and he's being greedy. So sparrow actually decides to teach him a lesson. What she does, she picks up the burnt wood, from there, and ties to the crow's, tail. And that's when, crow gets the punishment because of his greediness. That's the gist of the story. Thank you, audience. I hope you enjoyed this story. And as I said a while ago, that based on which part of the country you are, you would have had different versions of this story also. I had my own version as well for this same story. But great, let's continue the journey. Moving on to a wonderful story. This story is, coming from Shobhaji from Bilaspur. And we all like the stories of notorious kids. And that is also because it taught us the variety of lessons. But this story is about a skilled liar who lands up tasting his own medicine. So let's hear it from the Granny Shobhaji from Bilaspur, narrating a wonderful Hindi story. Let's hear.
हाँ तो प्यारे बच्चों, कुछ दिन पहले तुम लोगों ने कहा था एक बहुत अच्छी स्टोरी सुनाइए, तो आज मैं तुम लोगों को एक नटखट लड़के बिंदे की कहानी सुनाती हूँ। ठीक है, लेकिन जैसा भी हो कम से कम उसके जैसा मत बनना। बिंदे बहुत शरारती था, कद में छोटा था लेकिन शरारत बहुत करता था। हमेशा सबसे कहा करता था झूठ नहीं बोलना चाहिए, चोरी नहीं करना चाहिए, लेकिन जैसा बोलता था उसके बिल्कुल विरुद्ध काम करता था। हमेशा उसको जहां मौका मिलता चोरी भी कर लेता और जरूरत पड़ने पर झूठ भी बोल देता। एक दिन घूमने के लिए निकला शाम के समय। उसने देखा सड़क के किनारे खेत में बहुत सारे भुट्टे लगे हुए हैं। उन भुट्टों को देखकर उसके मन में लालच आ गया। उसने सोचा इतने सारे भुट्टे हैं, अगर मैं एक दो तोड़ भी लूंगा तो क्या होगा। बस क्या था, तुरंत पहुंच गया खेत में। उसने 2-4 भुट्टे तोड़ लिए, घर ला करके उनको बढ़िया भूंजा और भूंज करके खा लिया। उसको बड़ा मजा आया। उसने सोचा वाह, ये तो बहुत अच्छा काम है, हर्रा लगे न फिटकरी, रंग चोखा होए। बस उसके बाद से उसने नियम बना लिया, रोज शाम के समय जाता, खेत में से 2-4 भुट्टे तोड़ लेता और भूंज करके खा लेता और मजे लेता। लेकिन जो खेत का मालिक था उसको शक हो गया। उसको लगा कि कोई ना कोई रोज मेरे खेत में से भुट्टे चुरा रहा है। कौन चुरा रहा है, उसको पकड़ना चाहिए। उसने एक दिन खेत में रुक करके चोर को पकड़ने की योजना बना ली और रुक भी गया खेत में। बड़ी देर तक बैठे रहने के बाद में अचानक उसको बिंदे दिखाई दिया, जो खेत में से भुट्टे चुरा रहा था। उसको लगा यही चोर है, इसे पकड़ना चाहिए और उसने पकड़ भी लिया। उसने बिंदे को पकड़ करके उससे पूछा कि आप मेरे खेत में चोरी क्यों कर रहे हो? दूसरों को तो उपदेश देते हो, झूठ नहीं बोलना चाहिए, चोरी नहीं करना चाहिए, फिर ये क्या है? बिंदे ने शान से कहा, मैंने चोरी नहीं की है, मैंने तो इस तालाब के जल से पहले पूछ लिया था कि मैं ये भुट्टे तोड़ लूं कि नहीं तोड़ लूं। तो खेत के मालिक ने उससे पूछा, तुमने कैसे पूछा? बिंदे ने अपने दोनों हाथ में अंजलि भर करके पानी लिया और बोला, बोल रे पानी ठंडे, तुझको पूछे छोटा बिंदे, ले जाऊं भुट्टे 2-4। और उसके बाद में उसने अपने हाथ का पानी फेंक दिया। दूसरी बार उसने फिर से पानी भरा और पानी भरने के बाद में बोला, ले लो भाई ले लो, 2-4 ही क्यों, चाहे जितने ले लो, अपना ही तो खेत है। और बस मैंने भुट्टे तोड़ लिए, तो मैंने क्या बुरा काम किया। अब खेत के मालिक ने उससे कहा कि जरा मैं भी तो देखूं पानी कैसे बोलता है। उसने भी अपने हाथ में पानी लिया और पानी लेकर बोला, बोल रे पानी मीठे ठंडे, तुमको पूछे मोहन पंडे, लगाऊं बिंदे को 2-4 डंडे। फिर उसने उस पानी को फेंक कर दोबारा अपने हाथ में पानी लिया और बोला, 4 ही क्यों, मन चाहे लगाओ, बिंदे को जरा मजा चखाओ। उसके हाथ में डंडा देखकर बिंदे जी की तो सिट्टी पिट्टी गुम हो गई। उसने वहां से भागने में ही भलाई समझी और उसके बाद उसने कसम खा ली कि आगे से कभी किसी के यहाँ चोरी नहीं करेगा और झूठ नहीं बोलेगा। तो बच्चों, इस कहानी से तुमको क्या शिक्षा मिली? कम से कम ये तो सीखने के लिए मिला ही कि जो जैसा करता है उसको उसकी करनी का वैसा फल भी मिलता है। इसलिए अपने कर्म अच्छे रखना चाहिए। और दूसरी बात, दूसरों की मेहनत पर पानी फेरने की इच्छा कभी नहीं रखनी चाहिए, क्योंकि जो भी काम करता है वो बहुत मेहनत के साथ में, लगन ईमानदारी के साथ में करता है। इसलिए हमारा हक नहीं बनता है कि हम उसकी मेहनत पर पानी फेरें।
धन्यवाद शोभा ग्रैनी, आपने बहुत बहुत प्यारी कहानी सुनाई। मुझे बहुत उत्कंठा हो रही है आपसे एक सवाल पूछने की कि शोभा जी ये बताइए,
जी
आपने जिस जिस लहजे से ये कहानी प्रस्तुत की है, हमें हुबेहूब बिंदे हमारे सामने दिख रहा था, चोरी करते हुए, पकड़े जाते हुए। तो ये बताइए, ये लहजा और ये जो अपने वॉइस मॉड्यूलेशन करती है, ये कितना महत्वपूर्ण होता है कहानी में?
कहानी को यदि सरस और रोचक बनाना है तो उसके लिए थोड़ा जिस तरह के शब्द हैं उनमें उतार चढ़ाव भी होना बहुत जरूरी है। और इसीलिए उसमें मतलब जैसे कविता वगैरह भी थोड़ी सी रख दी जाए, थोड़ा मुहावरे कहावतों का भी प्रयोग कर लिया जाए, तो कहानी की रोचकता के साथ साथ साहित्यिकता भी बढ़ जाती है। क्योंकि जो चीजें हम लोग पढ़ करके याद नहीं कर सकते, या मतलब छोटे बच्चे नहीं याद कर सकते, वो ये कहानियां सुन करके जल्दी से उनके दिल और दिमाग में बैठ जाती हैं। तो अगर सरस और रोचक लहजे में कहानी सुनाई जाए तो उसका सकारात्मक असर बच्चों के दिमाग पर पड़ता है।
बहुत अच्छा, बहुत प्यारा कहा आपने। और शोभा जी, आपकी कहानी का तो मैं तो बड़ा फैन हो गया हूँ। आपको विनंती है कि आप ऐसी कहानी हमारे फाउंडेशन पे जरूर स्टोर करती रहिए। बहुत ग्रैंड चिल्ड्रन आपकी स्टोरी सुन के बहुत खुश होंगे। ऐसी कहानियां शुरू रहने दीजिए। फॉर द बेनिफिट ऑफ ऑडियंस, आई वुड लाइक टू नरेट दिस वंडरफुल स्टोरी ऑफ अ नोटोरियस किड कॉल्ड बिंदे. This particular character was a skilled liar, although he used to praise that one should not lie and all that, but in practice he never used to do that. So one day he discovered an easy technique of having snacks. He used to pass by a farm. He will pick up the sweet corn and eat, and he always felt that there are so many sweet corns, and nobody would even notice if one or two pieces vanish. Nobody would be able to identify him. But it became a habit, and this character called Binde got used to this bad habit. But one day farmer decided to catch this boy, and he actually caught him red-handed. And guess what? Binde thought he's smart, and he actually said, you know what, Mr. Pandey. So Mr. Pandey is the farmer. So he said, Mr. Pandey, I actually asked the water from the pond, and I took permission from the water whether I can have sweet corn from here. Now farmer, instead of showing a complete shock and surprise, actually farmer was even more intelligent. He said, Binde, can you show me how did you ask? So he actually took water from the pond and asked water, can I have some sweet corns from here? And then farmer said, okay, then what happened? He said, no. Water replied that yes, please go ahead, doesn't matter, even if you have few pieces. Okay. And look at the smartness of the farmer. Farmer exactly did the same thing. What farmer did, he also picked up the water from the pond and asked water that tell me, in order to punish Binde, can I lagaw him 3-4 dande? Can I hit him with the stick 3-4 times? And this is how the intelligent farmer actually taught a lesson to a skilled liar called Binde. So Shobhaji, thank you so much for sharing this wonderful story. We really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. With that, ladies and gentlemen, let's move towards south from Madhya Pradesh. We have a wonderful story coming from Granny Saraswati ji. This story is, as most of us actually wake up to an alarm clock, most part of the India still is used to waking up to a crowing of a rooster. Now, this story revolves around a lady owner and a rooster who had a misbelief that if she takes away the rooster from the village will come to a standstill. Let's see what happens. Let's hear the story first, and we'll then have a quick chat with Granny Saraswati. Let's hear the story.
ಅಜ್ಜಿ ನನಗೆ ಒಂದು ಕತೆ ಹೇಳು.
ಒಂದು ನಿಮಿಷ ಇರು. ನಿಮಗೆ ಯಾವ ಥರ ಕತೆ ಬೇಕು? ಒಂದು ಜಂಬದ ಮುದುಕಿ ಕತೆ ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ, ಆಯ್ತಾ? ಆ ಮುದುಕಿಗೆ ತನ್ನ ಹತ್ರ ಕೋಣೆ ಇದೆ ಅನ್ನೋದೇ ಒಂದು ಜಂಬ. ಸೋಮನಹಳ್ಳಿ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಹಳ್ಳಿ. ಆ ಹಳ್ಳಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಒಬ್ಳು ಮುದುಕಿ. ಆ ಮುದುಕಿ ಹತ್ರ ಒಂದು ಕೋಣೆ. ಆ ಕೋಣೆ ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ ಎದ್ದು ಕೊಕ್ಕೊ ಅಂತ ಕೂಗ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ಆ ಕೂಗೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಏನಾಗ್ತಿತ್ತು, ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ ಆಯ್ತು ಅಂತ ಊರಿನ ಜನ ಎಲ್ಲ ಎದ್ದು ಅವ್ರವ್ರ ಕೆಲಸಕ್ಕೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಕಲ್ಲ, ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ ಎದ್ದು ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು. ಆ ಮುದುಕಿ ಒಂದಿನ ಅನ್ನಿಸ್ತು, ನನ್ನ ಕೋಳಿ ಇರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಈ ಊರಿನ ಜನ ಎಲ್ಲ ಬೇಗ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, ನನ್ನ ಕೋಳಿನ ಕರ್ಕೊಂಡು ನಾ ಹೊಟ್ಟೋಗ್ತೀನಿ ಯಾರು ಅನ್ಕೊಂಡು ಸಂಜೆ ಆಗ್ತಿದ್ದಂಗೆ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡೋದು, ಕೋಳಿ ನಿಂಗೆ ಹಿಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೊಟ್ಟೋದ್ಲು ಹಳ್ಳಿಯಿಂದ ಹೊರಗಡೆ. ಮತ್ತೆ ಕತ್ಲೆ ಆಯ್ತು. ಮತ್ತೆ ನೋಡ್ತಾಳೆ, ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ ಆಯ್ತು. ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ ಎದ್ದು ಅವಳಿಗೆ ಕೋಳಿ ಕೂಗ್ತು, ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ ಆಯ್ತು ಅಂತ ಎದ್ದು ಅದೇ ಹಳ್ಳಿ ವಾಪಸ್ ಬರ್ತಾಳೆ. ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಜನನು ಅವ್ರ ಕೆಲಸ ಅವ್ರು ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇವ್ರು ಅನ್ನಿಸ್ತು, ಇದೇನಿದು, ನನ್ನ ಕೋಳಿ ಇಲ್ಲ ಆದ್ರೂ ಇವರಿನ ಜನ ಎಲ್ಲ ಎದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವಾಗ ಯೋಚಿಸ್ತಾಳೆ, ಈ ನನ್ನ ಕೋಳಿಯಿಂದ ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಈ ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು ಸೂರ್ಯನಿಂದ. ಸೂರ್ಯ ಬರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ ಆಗತ್ತೆ. ನಾನೆಂತ ಮೂರ್ಖತನ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡೆ, ಇಂಥ ಒಳ್ಳೆ ಜನನ್ನ ನನ್ನ ಕೋಳಿಯಿಂದ ಬೆಳಗಾಗತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಹೋಗಿದ್ದೆ. ಇಲ್ಲ, ನಾನು ಆ ಥರ ಜಂಬ ಪಡಬಾರ್ದಿತ್ತು. ಈ ಕೋಳಿನ ಕರ್ಕೊಂಡು ನಾನು ಈ ಊರಿನ ಜನದ ಜೊತೆನೇ ಇರ್ತೀನಿ. ಮತ್ತೆ ಆ ಊರಿನ ಜನದ ಜೊತೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಒಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಇರ್ತಾಳೆ. ಊರಿನ ಜನನು ಅವಳಿಗೆ ಸಹಾಯ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡು ತಾನು ತನ್ನ ಜಂಬಾನೆಲ್ಲ ಬಿಟ್ಟು, ಜಂಬದ ಮುದುಕಿ ಜಂಬಾನೆಲ್ಲ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಆ ಊರಿನ ಜನಕ್ಕೆ ಸಹಾಯ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡು, ಹಳ್ಳಿ ಜನನು ಅವಳಿಗೆ ಸಹಾಯ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡು ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. ಏನಪ್ಪಾ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ನಾವ್ ಯಾವಾಗ್ಲೂ ನನ್ನ ಹತ್ರ ಇರೋದೇ ಸರಿ, ನಾನೇ ಸರಿ ಅಂತ ಜಂಬ ತೋರಿಸ್ಬಾರ್ದು, ಮುದುಕಿ ತರ. ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತಾ? ಏನಪ್ಪಾ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ನಾವ್ ಯಾವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಎಲ್ಲರ ಜೊತೆನೂ ಹೊಂದ್ಕೊಂಡು ಸಹಬಾಳ್ವೆ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು. ಮಾಡ್ತೀಯಲ್ಲ, ನಿನ್ನ ತಿನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ನಿನ್ನ ಸ್ನೇಹಿತರಿಗೂ ಕೊಡ್ಬೇಕು ಸ್ಕೂಲಲ್ಲಿ. ಆಯ್ತಾ? ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತಾ? ಓಕೆ, ಗುಡ್ ಬಾಯ್.
Thank you so much, Granny Saraswati. It was such a lovely story. In fact, Saraswati ji, I'm really tempted to ask you a question. If you could unmute yourself, I would love to hear from you. When you start narrating a story, how do you decide on the story? Is it based on the children's mood? Or you pre-decided and then tell the story? What happens actually?
No, I can't decide on kids' mood, because kids are always, they will be in their own way. So I will ask them to listen when they ask for the story. And I thought especially this story will help, because kids of these days, they are very selfish. They don't care about anybody, they and themselves. So I thought if I tell this story, they may learn something. As that old lady thought, because of a rooster only, it goes day and night. And I want to make them understand the world is for everybody. The light is for everybody. And we should share and live happily with. When I was in first standard or second standard, I had this lesson, sir. I remember my teacher saying that you should always share things with your neighborhood or with your friends. As we grow, we change our thoughts.
So sweet of you, Sardaji. What a wonderful, very humbling experience of having a chat with you on this. For the benefit of the audience, I'll quickly narrate the wonderful story.
Okay,
of a proud lady, who had a rooster, and she thought that because of the crowing of a rooster, village starts its day, sun starts giving the sunlight, water starts coming into the taps, a farmer starts going to the field, all of that. She was full of herself. She thought that I am doing a big favor to the villagers. So one day she actually decides to sort of disappear, hoping that village will actually come to a standstill. And guess what? It actually happens that she takes away the rooster for a day and comes back the next morning. And guess what? She thought that people will, shout at her, or people will come requesting that, please don't disappear like this in future. But that misbelief actually turned into a very humbling episode for her, because she saw that the world moved on. The village actually moved on with all they were doing. And as Saraswati ji gave a very wonderful message, that the sunlight is for everyone, and the nature is doing its job, and you can't be with the misbelief that I'm doing a big favor. In fact, you should believe in sharing your resources. That's the moral of the story. So thank you so much once again, Grannies Saraswati ji. Now we are moving to another wonderful story coming from Hyderabad in Telugu. During childhood, we all have our own favorite stories of the generous kings. But in generous kings, normally kings are the heroes. But in this story, you will see that an old lady, a poor lady, with her attitude, she won this generous king's heart, and she becomes the hero of the story. Let's hear a Telugu story from Suryalata garu.
ఇంకా చెప్పనబ్బా ఒక కథ గుర్తొచ్చింది. సరే చెప్తానేనమ్మా. అనగనగా ఒక ఊరిలో ఒక రాజు ఉన్నాడట. ఆ రాజుకి ఎప్పుడు కూడా అన్ని రాజ్యాల్లో కన్నా తన రాజ్యం గొప్పది అనిపించుకోవాలని తాపత్రయం ఉండేదట. ఒక సంవత్సరం దీపావళి పండుగ దగ్గర పడుతుందనగా రాజుగారికి ఒక ఆలోచన వచ్చిందంట. ఆ ఆలోచన ఏంటంటే, అన్ని రాజ్యాల్లో కన్నా తన రాజ్యంలో ఈ పండుగ, దీపావళి పండుగ బాగా జరిగింది అనిపించుకోవాలని ఆ రాజ్యంలో ఒక ప్రకటన చేశాడట. ఆ ప్రకటన ఏంటంటే, రాజ్యంలో అందరి ఇళ్లలో ఎవరైతే ఇల్లు బాగా అలంకరించుకుంటారో, ఎవరిల్లు అయితే దీపాలతో బాగుంటుందో వాళ్ళకి తనే స్వయంగా బహుమానం ఇస్తానని రాజ్యం అంతా దండోర వేయించాడట. అప్పుడు ఆ రాజ్యంలోని ప్రజలంతా కూడా, అమ్మో రాజుగారు స్వయంగా బహుమానం ఇస్తారట, అందుకని మన ఇళ్ళని మన దీపాలతో అలంకరించుకోవాలని చెప్పి అందరూ కూడా ఎంతో అందంగా వాళ్ళ ఇళ్ళని అలంకరించుకున్నారట. అయితే ఆ పండుగ రోజు సాయంత్రం రాజుగారు కొంతమంది పరిచారికలను తీసుకొని పర్యటన చేశారట రాజ్యం అంతా. అయితే రాజ్యంలో వెళ్తూ ఉంటుంటే ఒక ఇంటిని మించి ఒక ఇల్లు ఎంతో అందంగా అలంకరించుకొని ఎంతో అద్భుతంగా ఉన్నాయట. అబ్బా ఎంత బాగా అలంకరించుకున్నారు అనుకుంటూ ముందుకు నడిచి వెళ్తూ ఉంటుంటే ఊరికి చివర ఒక చిన్న ఇల్లు చీకటితో ఉందట. ఏంటబ్బా చీకటితో ఉంది, ఆ ఇల్లు ఎవరిది, ఎందుకు వాళ్ళు దీపాలతో అలంకరించుకోలేదు అనుకుంటూ ఆ ఇంటి దగ్గరికి వెళ్ళాడంటే రాజుగారు. ఇంటి దగ్గరికి వెళ్ళి చూస్తే ఆ ఇంటి ముందు ఒక రహదారిలో ఒక చిన్న దీపం వెలుగుతూ కనిపించిందట. ఆ చిన్న దీపం వెలుగులో ఆ రహదారిలో ఒక గొయ్యి కూడా కనిపించిందట. దాని పక్కనే ఒక అరుగు మీద అవ్వ ఒక దీపంలో నూనె పోస్తూ దీపం ఆరిపోకుండా చెయ్యి అడ్డం పెట్టుకుని కూర్చుందంట. సరే రాజుగారు ఏం చేశారు, అవ్వ దగ్గరికి వెళ్ళి, అవ్వ ఏంటి ఇక్కడ ఏం చేస్తున్నావు, నీ ఇంటి ముందు దీపం వెలిగించుకోకుండా, నీ ఇంట్లో దీపం వెలిగించుకోకుండా ఇక్కడ దీపం వెలిగిస్తున్నావు ఏంటి, ఏం చేస్తున్నావు అని అడిగాడట. అయ్యా నా దగ్గర రోజుకు ఒక దీపం వెలిగించేంత డబ్బే ఉందయ్యా, అందుకనే ఈ రహదారిలో ఈ గొయ్యి ఉంది కదా, ఈ గొయ్యమ్మటి వెళ్ళే ఈ రహదారి ఎమ్మటి వెళ్ళే బాడుసార్లు ఈ గొయ్యిలో పడిపోతారేమో అని ఈరోజు ఈ దీపం ఇక్కడ వెలిగిస్తున్నానయ్యా అందయ్యా, అందుకనే ఈ రహదారిలో ఈ గొయ్యి ఉంది కదా, ఈ గొయ్యమ్మటి వెళ్ళే ఈ రహదారి ఎమ్మటి వెళ్ళే బాడుసార్లు ఈ గొయ్యిలో పడిపోతారేమో అని ఈరోజు ఈ దీపం ఇక్కడ వెలిగిస్తున్నానయ్యా అని చెప్పిందట. అప్పుడు రాజుగారు ఆ మాటలు విని ఎంతో ఆశ్చర్యపోయారంట. అబ్బా ఏంటి ఎంత దయనీయురాలు, ఇంత గొప్పగా ఆలోచన చేసి సమాజ సేవ చేయాలనుకుంది. అంత గొప్ప మనిషి అనుకొని, ఆహా పండగ పూట అందరూ దీపాలు తమ ఇళ్ళ ముందు వెలిగించుకుంటే ఈవిడ బాడసార్లు పడిపోకుండా ఉండడానికి చక్కగా బాడసార్ల కోసం ఈ దీపం వెలిగిస్తుంది కదా, అందుకనే అందరికన్నా గొప్పగా వెలిగించిన దీపం ఈవిడదే గొప్పది అని చెప్పేసి ఇప్పుడు ఆ రాజుగారు బహుమతి ఈ అవ్వకే ప్రకటించారట. ఆ విధంగా ఆ ప్రకటన ప్రకారంగా రాజుగారు అవ్వకి బహుమానం ఇచ్చారట. ఈ రెండో రోజు ఆ దారిలో గొయ్యి ఉంది కదా, ఆ గొయ్యను మరమ్మతు చేపించి చక్కగా దారి చక్కగా ఉండేటట్టుగా చేశారంట. దీనివల్ల ఏమైందంటే, అర్థం ఏమైందమ్మా, నీకేమర్థమైంది?
మన గురించి కాకుండా గురించి కూడా
ఆలోచించాలి. అంటే సొంత లాభం కాదు.
Highlight Suryalata also, please.
Okay.
Yes. So
This is a story called The Good of Others, Parahitam, doing good for others. Once there was a king on Diwali day, he wanted all his subjects to decorate their houses beautifully, and he would reward the best decorated house. Then he goes around the town and he finds that people have been outdoing themselves in decorating their houses, but he finds one house very far off outside the city, which it's a small hovel, small hut, and there was no light there at all. And he goes ahead and sees, and he finds that there is one small lamp near a huge pitfall on the road. So the king goes and asks her, today is Diwali, why didn't you light your house, or you're outside, you have come and you're lighting up this road? She said that because it's so dark, all the travelers might fall into this pitfall. I have money only for one lamp, so I put it here. So this is it's a beautiful story to teach children the importance of looking at the needs of others before you look at needs of yourself. చాలా బాగుంది సూర్యలత గారు ఈ కథ.
థ్యాంక్ యూ మేడం.
ఇది పండగల చుట్టే మీరు రాస్తూ ఉంటారా, కథలు చెప్తూ ఉంటారా, లేకపోతే పండగలు ఎందుకు ఇంత ముఖ్యం మనకి?
మన భారతదేశంలో సంస్కృతి సాంప్రదాయాలకు నిలయమైన దేశం మన దేశం. ఈ పండగలు అనేవి మన వివిధ ప్రాంతాల యొక్క సంస్కృతి సాంప్రదాయాలు అనేవి తెలియజేస్తాయి. ఇప్పుడు హిందువుల పండుగలు ఉన్నాయి అనుకోండి, ఒక్కొక్క పండుగ ఆ పండుగలో వారి యొక్క సంస్కృతి, వారి ఆచార వ్యవహారాలు అవన్నీ తెలియజేయటం అనేది జరుగుతుంది. ఆ విధంగా పండగ రూపంలో మనం ఇల్లు శుభ్రం చేసుకోవటం ఏంటి, తర్వాత ఆ పండుగలు ఏమేం చేస్తారు ఏంటి అనేవి అనేక విషయాలు పండుగల ద్వారా మనకు తెలుస్తుంటాయి. అయితే ఈ పండగలప్పుడనే కాకుండా నేటి బాలలే రేపటి పౌరులు అనే ఉద్దేశం మీద చిన్నతనంలో నుంచే పిల్లలకి పరులకు హితం చేయాలి, మేలు చేయాలి అనే ఆలోచన పిల్లల్లో కలగ చేయాలి అనే విషయంపై నేను ఎక్కువగా ఆ విషయం మీద పిల్లలకి కథలు చెప్తూ ఉంటాను, స్టోరీస్. ఆ విధంగా ఈ పండగని, అందులో పిల్లలకి ఇష్టమైన పండుగ దీపావళి. ఆ పండగ అయితే కాస్త మతాబులు, టపాకాయలు ఇవన్నీ ఉంటాయి అనే ఇంట్రెస్ట్ మీద కూడా వింటారనే ఉద్దేశంతో ఈ పండుగను తీసుకొని చెప్పడం జరిగింది మేడం.
చాలా బాగా చెప్పారండి. What her reply is, I asked her why is it that she weaves her stories around festivals, and why are festivals important. She said festivals are reflective of local region and regional culture and traditions, so I want to talk to them about it. And it holds the children's attention because Diwali is a festival which they enjoy very much. Diwali or Vinayak Chavithi, things like this, they enjoy a lot. And therefore, I chose this festival. And because today's child is tomorrow's citizen, I want to put this concept of working for doing good to others from a very young age itself. That's why I chose this story and told him that. Namaskaram andi. Thank you chala. Dhanyavadalu.
Thank you so much, Suryalata garu, and thank you, Dr. Kenara. Such a powerful message through a simple story. It teaches you a lot. From Hyderabad, now we are moving all the way up north to Delhi. We have a wonderful story that would be narrated by Suresh Bhargavaji. But this story is actually about two princes, who had very contrasting personas. So let's hear the story first and see what is the lesson it is teaching us. Let's hear the story.
आओ बच्चों, आज आपके दादू आपको एक बहुत अच्छी कहानी सुनाएंगे। ये कहानी आपके दादू को आपके दादू के दादाजी ने उस समय सुनाई थी जब आपके दादू आपके बराबर के थे। ये कहानी दो राजकुमार भाइयों की है। एक बार एक राजा था और एक रानी थी। उनके दो पुत्र थे। राजा रानी के पुत्रों को राजकुमार कहते हैं। दोनों भाइयों में बहुत अंतर था। बड़ा भाई बहुत झगड़ालू था, बहुत घमंडी था, जबकि छोटा भाई बहुत अच्छे स्वभाव का था और सबसे मिलकर रहता था। इन दोनों राजकुमार भाइयों के कुछ मित्र थे। उनमें कुछ गरीब मित्र भी थे। दो तीन गरीब मित्र इतने गरीब थे जिनको खाने को पूरा नहीं मिलता था, पढ़ने की कोई व्यवस्था नहीं थी, कपड़े वगैरह भी बहुत अच्छे नहीं होते थे। एक बार दोनों राजकुमार भाई अपने मित्रों के साथ जंगल में खेलने के लिए गए। एक मित्र ने, गरीब मित्र ने बड़े राजकुमार भाई से उसका खिलौना मांगा। वो तलवार के साथ खेल रहा था। उसने कहा, मैं तुमको अपनी तलवार नहीं दूंगा, तुम देखो, मैं खेल रहा हूं, तुम देखो। जबकि छोटे भाई ने बिना मांगे उस गरीब मित्र को अपनी तलवार दे दी और कहा, खेल लो, जब खेल चुकोगे तब मेरे को वापस देना। वो मित्र बहुत खुश हुआ एवं उसने सब मित्रों को कहा कि देखो, छोटे भाई राजकुमार ने मेरे को तलवार दी है खेलने के लिए। इस प्रकार छोटे भाई के साथ सब मित्र खेलने लगे। बड़े भाई के साथ कोई नहीं खेल रहा था। कुछ समय पश्चात बड़े भाई को महसूस हुआ, बहुत ही दुख हुआ कि उसके साथ कोई भी नहीं खेलता है, जबकि छोटे भाई के साथ सब खेलते हैं। वो राजकुमार भाई, बड़ा भाई, अपने पिता राजा के पास गया और उसने राजा से कहा कि देखिए पिताजी, सब छोटे भाई राजकुमार के साथ खेलते हैं, मेरे साथ कोई नहीं खेलता है, मैं बहुत दुखी हूँ। राजा ने पता लगाया कि क्यों ऐसा होता है, तो उसे पता लगा कि छोटा भाई राजकुमार अपने सब गरीब मित्रों को और सब मित्रों को सब कुछ खेलने के लिए देता है, गरीब मित्रों की बहुत सहायता करता है, उनको अपने कपड़े भी दे देता है और उनके पढ़ने की व्यवस्था भी करता है। जबकि बड़ा भाई राजकुमार भाई किसी से कोई मतलब नहीं रखता है, किसी की कोई सहायता नहीं करता है। जब राजा को ये पता लगा तो उसने अपने बड़े पुत्र राजकुमार को बुलाया और उससे कहा कि देखो, तुम अपने मित्रों को कुछ भी नहीं देते हो, उनकी कोई सहायता नहीं करते हो, जबकि तुम्हारे पास सब कुछ है। जिन मित्रों के पास कुछ नहीं होता है उनको तुमको वो सब चीज देनी चाहिए। तुम्हारा छोटा राजकुमार भाई सबको देता है, इसलिए सब उसके साथ खेलते हैं। तुम भी ऐसा करो तो तुम्हारे साथ भी सब खेलेंगे। बड़े भाई ने अपने आप को बदला और उसने सब मित्रों को बुलाकर अपने खिलौने दिए और अपने में बदलाव लाया। जब सब मित्रों को बड़ा राजकुमार भाई सब खिलौने दे रहा था, खाने की चीज अपने बांट के खाता था, तब सब मित्र जो है बड़े राजकुमार भाई के भी साथ खेलने लगे। जब कुछ समय बीता तो राजा ने अपने बड़े पुत्र को अपने पास बुलाकर पूछा कि तुमको अब कैसा लग रहा है? तुमने जब सबके साथ अपनी चीजें शेयर करी, गरीब मित्रों की सहायता करी, तो तुम्हारे साथ सब खेलने लगे, तो तुमको अभी कैसा लगता है? बड़ा राजकुमार भाई बोला पिता से कि पिताजी, मेरे को बहुत अच्छा लगता है, मैं बहुत गलती पे था, मैं घमंड करता था, मैं अपने को बहुत बड़ा समझता था, इसलिए मेरे मित्र मेरे पास नहीं आते थे। अब मेरे को बहुत अच्छा लगता है और सबको अपनी जिंदगी में अपने से छोटों की, अपने से ज्यादा गरीब लोगों की सहायता करनी चाहिए। यही कर्तव्य है हर मनुष्य का। यही मैं कहना चाहता हूँ पिताजी। अब मैं बहुत खुश हूँ, बहुत खुश हूँ, बहुत अच्छा, धन्यवाद, खुश रहो।
थैंक यू सो मच भार्गवा जी, बहुत बहुत प्यारी कहानी सुनाई आपने। मुझे एक चीज आपसे अवश्य सुननी है भार्गवा जी, क्योंकि आपने भी ये कहानी अपने दादू से सुनी हुई है। तो आप हमें ये बताइए कि क्या आपके हर कहानी में शिक्षा छिपी होती है, या कुछ कहानी ऐसी है जो सिर्फ एक एंटरटेनमेंट, मनोरंजन के माध्यम के लिए आप सुनाते हैं?
जी देखिए, ऐसा है, कहानी दादा दादी और पोता पोती या नाता नाती, इन लोगों के बीच में जो कहानी का संबंध है वो एक बहुत अलग होता है। खासतौर से बच्चे जब रात्रि का समय आता है और जब उनको निद्रा की गोद में जाना होता है, तब उन लोगों को बहुत आसानी लगती है कहानी सुनते सुनते सोने में। तो खासतौर से बच्चे जो है रात के समय में ही दादा दादी को खोजते हैं और कहानी सुनने के लिए आग्रह करते हैं। तो और वैसे भी कभी कभी हम लोगों का भी इच्छा होती है कहानी सुनाने की, तब जैसे मैंने आज बच्चों को बुला के कहानी सुनाई। तो रात में कई बार ऐसा भी होता है कि बच्चे पूरी कहानी सुन ही नहीं पाते हैं, उससे पहले ही सो जाते हैं, और जब दूसरे दिन उनको याद आता है तो वो लोग दोबारा आग्रह करते हैं कि उस कहानी को पूरा करिए। तो जो कहानी सुनाने का और सुनने का दादा दादी का, पोते पोती का है, वो संबंध ही बिल्कुल अलग है। और शिक्षाप्रद कहानी, तो हर कहानी का एक मोरल तो होता है, हर कहानी में एक सारांश रहता है, और हर कहानी में कुछ ना कुछ शिक्षा रहती है। किसी कहानी में पूरी शिक्षा रहती है, शुरू से आखिर तक, मतलब बच्चों को समझाया जाता है। कोई कोई कहानी ऐसी होती है जिसमें एंटरटेनमेंट होता है, लास्ट में जाके उनके कुछ मोरल निकलता है। तो दोनों तरह की कहानी सुनाते हैं। बच्चों का आग्रह जब होता है कि हमको कुछ अच्छी कहानी सुनाइए, इंटरेस्टिंग हो, तो वैसी कहानी सुना दी जाती है।
क्या खूब कही भार्गवा जी, आपने बिल्कुल सही कही। और जो आपने एक कहा कि एक एक दादा और नातू में जो एक रिलेशन होता है, नात या नाती में जो रिलेशन होता है, ये बहुत स्ट्रांग बॉन्ड होता है। और
जी
आपने सही फरमाया कि कई बार तो रात को लोग कहानी सुन भी नहीं पाते, बट सुबह फिर से आपको याद दिलाते हैं। सो
जी
धन्यवाद हमसे जुड़ने के लिए। ऐसी ही कहानी सुनाते रहिए और हमारे यंग पीढ़ी का मनोरंजन करते रहिए। उनको शिक्षा प्राप्त करने के लिए काफी मदद होती है इन स्टोरीज से। धन्यवाद।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
So,
बहुत बहुत
ladies and gentlemen, for your benefit, let me help you with this quick narration of the story in gist. So, this story about the two princes, the younger one and the elder one, who had, of course, friends from varied backgrounds, economical backgrounds. Some of them were not so rich, some of them were poor. And when they used to go for playing, the younger one actually had a habit of sharing his playing at the sword or anything with the kids, whereas the elder one did not believe in sharing. And as a matter of fact, what happened in the period of time, that people stopped playing with the elder one, and they felt very uncomfortable playing with this prince. And so one day he complained then to his father that, I don't know what's going wrong, but people don't play with me, they don't talk to me, whereas our younger one, my younger brother, is very popular. Then the king looked into the matter, and then he explained that, my dear prince, this is happening because your younger brother actually shares a lot of his playing stuff with his friends. And if you start doing that, people will be able to open up with you, they will play with you, they will share with you, they will talk to you. So through this wonderful story, it gives us a message of the sense of sharing, very apt for the kids, because some of the fights also happen during the playing time, but some of the best learnings also come from the playing time. So thank you so much, Bhargavaji, for this wonderful story. With that, ladies and gentlemen, our today's quota of stories may have come to an end, but this is a big responsibility for all of us. Food for Thought Foundation and HLF, we have partnered together to start this project of Save Endangered Stories. because we have a responsibility to pass on this legacy. There is a great sense of urgency to collate these stories, digitize them, distribute them, because stories are going to play a big role in passing on the legacy to the next generation. And long-lasting culture, which is based on our ethos, are best stored, best translated, best passed on from generation to generation through stories. We have a great responsibility. Food for Thought Foundation site you can visit any day. It need not be today, it need not be tomorrow, 365 days, any time of the day. If you feel like narrating a story, sharing a story with us, visit our website, foodforthoughtfoundation.org. Put your story in any language, no barrier. All we'll need is an English translation of that story. But please join this wave of saving the endangered stories to pass on the legacy. All I want to say before I pass it on to Dr. Kendra for a concluding remark is, I would say today we are rushing to counselors more than teachers because stories are vanishing. I am today what I am today because of all the stories that I've heard from my grandparents. And with folded hands, I say, and I request all the grandparents to join this wave. Jud jao hamare saath, and please share the stories. Thank you so much on behalf of Food for Thought Foundation and HLF. Thank you. Dr. Kendra, you're on mute. Sorry.
Thank you, Megh. It was a nice session with all these grandparents sharing their stories that they had with their grandchildren. I'll just read out some of the nice comments that we received. Endearing. Okay, then there is one for the Marathi story. Durgadas Kasbekar says, Kaula Chimney Ghost Avadli. I don't know whether I'm speaking correctly.
You like the story, yeah.
Yeah. Then how real, hands moving, working with storytelling, this how grannies do.
Yeah.
And what a legacy. That's Amita Desai. Then Uma Devi says, good afternoon, excellent storytelling. Saraswati garu cheptunnaru, Katha chala bagundi, dhanyavadalu ani. Kala Gopalakrishnan says, great idea to have this session. Sangamitra Malik says, all the stories are excellent. What a nice session for children. Tatva Art says, not only stories, but some songs mentioned in Athavan Intli Gani needs to be revived.
Yes.
Okay.
Very
so,
true.
Childhood starts with Kaula Chimney story. That's what she said. There are a couple of things for you also make personally, which says there's something enchanting about bow tie and suspenders. And there is an old teammate of yours, Sushila Grace, who says, good to see you here. Now, thank you very much, Saraswati ji, Shobha ji, Parvati ji, Suryalata ji, and Bhargava ji. It was such a nice session.
धन्यवाद.
बहुत अच्छा लगा आप लोगों से मिलकर. Very nice to have been with you. Thank you very, very much for this lovely session, which was enjoyed by everybody who saw it. You can see this recording also later when you want, and please show it to other people as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
all of us who have worked to bring this festival out are people from within your all friend circles. We are all citizens and volunteers who have brought this out. This has been an extremely satisfying festival. What the last 2 days have been. Fantastic, a great lineup of speakers, events, talks, discussions, and an amazing audience. It's great to do this HLF. Thank you. HLF rock! Come rain or sunshine, HLF goes on!
Good afternoon and welcome to the poetry section, the Kaavya Dhaara at Hyderabad Literary Festival 2022. We will present 3 poets. Welcome Arundhathi Subramaniam, Michelle Cahill, and Sridala Swami. Arundhathi Subramaniam is a leading poet and author of 13 books of poetry and prose. Her recent poetry collection, Love Without a Story, was published in 2019, and last year in 2021, she released a book of essays titled Women Who Wear Only Themselves. Arundhathi has been shortlisted for the T.S. Eliot Prize in 2015. She's the winner of the Sahitya Academy Award in 2020, the Khushwant Singh Poetry Prize, Raza Award, the Il Ceppo Prize in Italy, the Homi Bhabha and the Charles Wallace Fellowship, among others. She has worked over the years as curator, critic, and poetry editor. Michelle Cahill is an Australian author of Indian heritage who was born in Kenya and has lived in the United Kingdom. She has received awards in poetry and fiction, notably the NSW Premier's Literary Award for Letters to Pessoa, which came out in 2016, the Kingston Writing School Hilary Mantel International Short Story Competition, the Art Queensland Val Vallis Award, and the Red Room Poetry Fellowship. Her book, Vishwarupa, was published in 2019 and shortlisted in the Victorian Premier's Literary Awards. She has another work to be released shortly in 2022 titled Daisy and Wolf. Sridala Swami is a poet, essayist, photographer, and author of children's books. Her first collection of poems, A Reluctant Survivor, was published in 2007 and shortlisted for the Shakti Bhatt First Book Award in 2008. The Escape Artist released in 2014 and was shortlisted for the inaugural Khushwant Singh Poetry Prize. Her work has featured in the Blood Axe Book of Contemporary Indian Poets, which came out in 2008. She was a Charles Wallace Writer in Residence at the University of Stirling, Scotland in 2011, and a Fellowship of the International Writing Program at the University of Iowa in 2013. In 2020, she was on the jury of the Montreal International Poetry Prize. Run of the Shadows is her latest collection of poems published in 2021. Dear ladies, happy to have you all here. I request you to please read from your works, past, present, and future. Choice is yours. You have 15 minutes dedicated to your reading. If there is some time at the end, we may do an encore round before we wrap up at 3:50 or thereabouts. Look forward, ladies, and shall we begin alphabetically? Arundhathi, will you begin, please? Thank you.
Happy to. Thank you, Amita. And it feels very good to be here back at HLF after 3 years or maybe 4. Unfortunately, it cannot be in person, but it feels very good to be back and to be reading with Michelle and Sridala. Look forward to their readings, and congratulations, Sridala, on the new book. I'm going to be reading from this particular book, which is my most recent book of poems. It's called Love Without a Story. And as the title suggests, it's a book that circles the theme of intimacy in various ways. There are poems to friends and lovers and parents and monks and mystics and Marxists, and conversations with people of all kinds of persuasions. Often a way of connecting with people across the very rigid divides that seem to have taken over our world. I'm going to start with a poem called Tongue, which is a poem that implicates many of the themes that are recurrent for me in my poetry. The theme of language, of quest, and of the very unexpected ways in which the mundane and the magical converge. Tongue. This has an epigraph by John Berger, who says, "The tongue is alone and tethered in its mouth." Tongue. The man in front of me is reading a balance sheet. He is smiling, his gaze shimmying between columns, effortlessly bilingual. And though a little drunk on the liquor of profit, I like to think he is not immune to the sharp beauty of integers simmering with their own inner life. And I wonder if he feels the way I do sometimes around words, waiting for them to lead me past the shudder of taproot, past the inkiness of groundwater, to those places where all tongues meet. Calculus, Persian, coq baroque, flamenco, the tongues that sparrows know, and accountants, and those palm trees at the far end of holiday photographs. Your tongue, mine. The kiss that knows from where the first songs sprang, forested and densely plural. The kiss that knows no separation. And with that, I'd like to move to a poem called The Monk. Many of the poems in this book are about journeys. There's a journey to Ajmer, to the Dargah of Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti. There is a journey to La Verna, which is the monastery associated with St. Francis of Assisi. And there is a journey to that enigmatic granite mountain in Western Tibet, Mount Kailash. The monk. The monk who's been in silence 16 years writes me a note at a yak tea stall, skirted by ragged prayer flags in a grey hiccuping wind on the road to Kailash. His face is scarp and fissure and gleaming teeth. He spends each day cleaning his shrine. It's worth it, he laughs. I clean the shrine, it cleans me. He was a spare parts dealer in a time he barely remembers, before he was tripped up by something that felt like a granite mountain in reverse. The deepest pothole he's ever known, too deep to be called love. That turned him into a spare part himself, utterly dispensable, wildly unemployed. And if there is another lifetime, This is what I'd ask for, he says. And now he doesn't laugh. Same silence, same cleaning. A very short poem that I'd like to read, which is a poem to parents or about parents. There's more than one in this book. Parents. They vanish as abruptly as they appear, busy perfecting the art of truancy when they send you away to school. They cry wolf many times over, but when you turn for a moment, they melt away, velvet-pawed, sure-footed into the night. And here's a poem that's not in the book. It's a poem called The Great Mother, and it's dedicated to Shabnam. Once upon a time, when a mother looked into her little son's mouth, she saw the universe, moons, suns, asteroids, and all. He was a boy god. He could be big and small as he chose. When my friend saw her mother laugh, she didn't see the universe or the 80 years or the dementia. She saw that the barbed wire fences of broken nations, the desert years of aloneness, the forgotten meals, the distractions of caregivers had all whooshed down her gullet. What was left was the great mother, laughing, toothless, the goddess who dawns only before oblivion. And I'm going to read the last couple of poems. A playful poem from my book. I wanted to read a poem to Abayar, who is in many ways the figure who is the central one in this particular book. But I'm inclined to skip that only because it's a long poem cycle. And I think I'm going to move to what I call a song for catabolic women. For those of you who don't know what catabolic is, it doesn't really matter. But the metabolic processes are supposed to be anabolic and catabolic. It doesn't matter. What the poem is about, I think, is self-evident. It's a poem for women everywhere who are going downhill and happily. Song for catabolic women. We are bound for the ocean and a largesse of sky. We're not looking for the truth or living a lie. We're coming apart. We're going downhill. The fury is almost done. We've had a fill. We are passionate, ironic, angelic, demonic, clairvoyant, rational, wildly Indian, anti-national. We're not trying to make our peace. We're not itching for a fight. We don't need your shade, and we don't need your light. We know charisma isn't contagious, and most rules are egregious. We're catabolic women. We've known the refuge of human arms, the comfort of bathroom floors. We've stormed out of rooms. We've thrown open the doors. We figured the tricks to turn rage into celebration. We know why the oldest god dances at every cremation. We've kissed in the rose garden, been the belles of the ball, hidden under bed covers, and we've stood tall. We're not interested in camouflage or self-revelation, not looking for a bargain or an invitation. We are capable of stillness even as we gallivant, capable of wisdom even as we rant. Look into our eyes. You'll see we are almost through. We can be kind, but we're not really. thinking of you. We don't remember names, and we don't do Sudoku. We are losing EQ and IQ, forgetting to say please and thank you. We are catabolic women. We've never ticked the right boxes, never filled out the form. Our dharma is tepid, our politics lukewarm. We've had enough of earnestness and indignation, but still keep the faiths in conversation. We are wily Easterners enough to argue nirvana and bhakti, talk yin and yang, Shiva and Shakti. When we are denied a visa, we fall back on astral travel. And when samsara gets intense, we simply are building now, unperpetuating, unfortifying, disintegrating. We are caterwauling, catastrophic, shambolic, cataclysmic, catabolic women. And I'd like to conclude with a very short poem, a one-line poem, also from the book. It's a poem called Goddess, and it's dedicated to Linga Bhairavi. In her burning rainforest, silence is so alive. You can hear, listening. Thank you. Delighted to be here. And over to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Arundhati. This was so beautiful. Michelle.
Thank you, Arundhati. I also thought that was very beautiful and I was totally raptured in it. So thank you. And thanks for having me. I'm really amazed and excited to be here, especially as I've never lived in India. I have emailed and connected with Sridala in the past, so it's lovely to be reading with you both, Arundhati and Sridala. Thank you so much for having me. So many of my poems from my book Vishvarupa, which was published quite some years ago, but it was a way of reimagining my connection to a culture and a language that I've lost. And there's a lot of grief in my poems for that connection of that loss of connection to India. Childhood. The afternoon cruises after badminton, lemonade and chutney sandwiches. Voices are like ribbon made for unwrapping the past. Syllables of imaginary laughter blend with the real as I recall the warmth of uncles, aunts, cousins left behind in foreign cities, Mumbai, London, Goa. I think of the bright day when Dad flew our kite on Primrose Hill. It's hard to say what matters. Everything fragments, defers to time's calibrations. The long shadows are deceptive. I piggyback my daughter in summer's leaf light. We swim laps in tandem, riding a pink foam noodle, sinking fast. Her tiny arms a choker for my neck. I'm weak to her commands, her tears. In any competition, I must lose. The dragonfly's flight is a tease, never kissing its reflection, a cross-stitch lacing the pool. The distant hum of the freeway sounds like a hole in the heart, the softest turbulence. The garden is a green humidity crib. And I wrote some poems about Hindu gods and goddesses and holy figures. And just from my perspective as someone who can't speak the languages and hasn't lived in the country, but reimagining the myths. And this one's called Sita. She came from the chawls of Kamathapura, Those ancient 5-story houses with their long verandas, swanned by ladies of the night who leant over banisters, whispering in dark alleys, wearing rouge and kajal. Keeper of beds, cheaper than Kothi for public servants, the drunken men of the village, more outcast than Dalit, Bungi or Dobi. She came from the chawls of Kamathapura, jangling her ankle bells with deep-throated taunts, prodding me on the way to Andheri when I was a foreigner in my own country. I was 10 years old on summer vacation, packed in the ladies' carriage, dressed in T-shirt and Levi's. Among the garlands, the gagras, ingenuous to her chicanery, her occult skill, not knowing beneath her sari the unspeakable scars of custom and ridicule, a cultural fragment out of context, a gender beyond my Christian judgment, fata morgana, a ficto-critical anecdote. I'd never read the epic myths or studied Sanskrit. I was ignorant of Lord Krishna, made incarnate as the beautiful Mohini and engaged to Aravanan. Her name was Sita, once from Bihar. She was beaten and disowned by her family, assaulted by beggars, by police, a harridan, an anarchist, her blouse loose and gaudy, her eyes so wild I would not forget. She came from the chawls of Kamathapura, a bathhouse where she lived with her mothers, her sisters, and her friends. Vayu, god of wind. I must apologise if I'm pronouncing things incorrectly. All night you scrape at roof corrugations, churning river, cloud or sky, turning a donkey's dreams to hysteria. Sleepless, I ache and think of trails your deer ride over the village. How when Indra blows his flute, he makes a view of a vana, a rag. How Sruthi Pavan stirs if Sarasvati plays her lute. Govind teaches the Naha Brahma when Vishnu beats his drum. By morning curtains dance, leaves are swept beneath my door. The river bears the mark of your fingerprints, 1,000 pieces of wind, carry away candles and marigolds from last night's puja. In the temple of ears, you are daylight's voice, though we mortals are never satisfied by your vibration, you, the bearer of Krishna's semen. We cross valleys, jewelers, to arrive here at Chakra, Ananda, the heart center. And in this breath, I'm told, is Sabda, Brahma, the Om or Om, a trinity, a diphthong. In naming a god, our guttural, nasal, labial air lapses from sound into silence, silence into trance. Govind teaches in Sanskrit 5 pranas, how the word samana means disturbance. He knows the colour of the wind god, whose varshra is a weapon and a thunderbolt. I watch the valley rinsed in light, the ashram windows tremble. I feel a shiver in my wrist from my body's weight in Naga Asana, and I think of Arjuna's long exile from the Pandavas in those hills where sadhus roam, where the waterfalls, river caves and tirthas still are, where the quiet ancient India I have read about still is, and I am nothing but this breath. I am cloud, fern, smoke, moss. Parvati in Darlinghurst. So I lay on the body of a pale Shiva. He spoke not a word. Bothered perhaps by my nut brown skin, my slow dance calms his electro shuffle. A slap of limbs pinned him down to my earth. I hadn't bathed in sandalwood, flouting legend with a preference for Estee Lauder. The moon's crescent tangled my hair, my breasts were bare, our timing synchronized. Night fizzed, vanishing into day, the club's hypnotic rhythm subdued. We scorned the Puranas, our tryst, no Himalayan cave, but a hotel bed, I had draped with stockings, lingerie, and the third eye, and the crystal ice of a third eye. I admit that's why I spoke with the speed of an antelope. It seems the acharyas were mistaken. I hadn't dated for marriage or adultery, nor with a wish to deck his house with flowers or sweep his floors. I am too busy, I declared, for dalliance or abstract gossip. I have no interest in honeybees and birds. All I wanted was a good time. I swear, as the river is my sister, that this guy was not my sun or my sky. No way did it even enter my mind to have his kids. His first wife's ashes are scattered all over the city. God damn it, Shiva is a walking disaster. Whatever he touches burns. Restraining him with handcuffs, I said, listen, babe, your lingam and my yoni are made for one thing only, improper and unchaste. It's little more than conjecture to think our sweaty helix could ever be whole. Then I offered to grind and gyrate him silly, suspend our want indefinitely, and he fell utterly silent with this new meaning. So I have a few more minutes to...
Yes, you do.
Okay. Two souls. My cat cries when I enter the garden, as if I have aroused her from winter's dream, or as if she wants to sing to me her name. What do cats dream of, Lord Krishna? A coconut shell of milk or a glittering fish? Now her slender limbs complete their asanas, now her neck arches, her jaw an elastic. The sharp eye constricts, discerns wind in the quivering grass from a grasshopper's camouflage. But there's no mistaking Maya. My cat rehearses the accurate lunge of her paw. She cries as one compelled, hungry yet not. Perhaps my being here deserves an answer. For weeks, I too have watched her, how she hunts. I've heard the moan of her catch at dusk, which is your hour, Lord Krishna. Then no bird sings, and only a cat with two souls dreams of death, her stigma left on a lizard or on a butterfly, whatever moves towards the shadow of meaning. As I am born of fire, I burn, my Lord, but I sleep in your arms. I am one Upanishad moon on fragrant nights. By day, I am the consort of oceans, rice fields, pale and invisible to you as the sky's temple. Lakshmi under oath. I left my footprints on the threshold of ancient temples, pointing inwards like the flow of fortune. In 200 BC, well-intentioned seers fashioned me etched in bronze on lintels, the gateways to the city. The land was barren, a salt marsh where Indra slayed a three-headed fiend, pole stars drifting and rivers forked. How my parasitic limbs ached, my breast cut off, its vestiges leaking milk. I was spared of Vedic hymns, a self-sovereign. The villagers offered testimony in rice cakes, garlands, jyoti. Untouchables defiled me. Brahmin beggars stalked me, carping for centuries. From that sensual debut, I was glitter in the ocean's foam. Here are my breasts, and here are my 20 acrylic nails, my spinal brace, my club feet and precious sores. All this lotus mania, crouching in Ganges mud, takes its toll. Even poets are stalking me. I am dripping in gold. They can't resist. Close up, the room is full of strangers, shaking, coughing, as I sign the affidavit in my red half slip and swallow a pill. Vishnu, I am not bipolar. I'm post-op. with a Restylane flush on a spending spree, unfolding in you as the moon would.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, I just wanted to read.
Yeah, shall we come back? Shall we come back to
Yes,
that, Michelle? Wonderful.
please.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michelle. That was intense. May I now invite Sridala, and may I invite her to lift up her new book, because this is quasi launch, right? Hyderabad has to launch a Hyderabadi poet. So Sridala, can we have your Run for the Shadows launched with Arundhathi and Michelle here and all our audience? Thank you so much. That looks so beautiful. I hope you'll be reading some out of those as well, that book as well.
Thank you so much, Amita, and thank you to the Hyderabad Lit Fest. Every one of my books has been released by the Goethe Zentrum first and in Hyderabad. So it gives me great pleasure to read from this collection at the Hyderabad Lit Fest with Arundhathi and Michelle. And it's such a pleasure to read with the two of you. This afternoon, when we were having lunch, each one of us in the house reported some rather strong, memorable dreams. And while I was trying to decide what to read from this collection, it seemed obvious that I should start with one of my 3 dream poems. So I begin with Dream Dawn. In the kind of dream that comes with sleep, rather than the kind that one keeps as a buttress against the future, I buy back 2 of my own dresses from a street side shop where the clothes are hung against the blue plastic as advertisement and wear. I lost these clothes along with much else when that relationship ended. You could even call it a nightmare, and you would be right, because the path to the shops are twisted, and there are men whose intentions must be suspect even in dreams, because that is how deep warning bells sound even in the silence of sleep. Things reach for me. They could be hands or voices, but they have the same weight. I buy my own dresses back without telling the man they were always mine, and I wrap them around my hands. I build myself back. Another man offers to show me the way out of the maze, and though I know somewhere outside the dream state that I should pick a side and follow it to the end, whether deeper inside or out beyond this decrepitude under the crown of an ancient banyan, this knowledge is beyond me in the dream. And besides, there's a smell of khaki about this man playing guide, and I can't remember if I'm to trust it or not. My instinct says not. At last, there's a woman, but she ignores me because she's on the phone. And this is an old dream, by which I mean the object and practices in it are from decades ago. The phone is in an STD booth. The display is red and changing fast beyond what my own meager purse contains. And I feel anxious for her, for myself. There is not enough time. There are so many incomplete tasks I fear the dream will not allow me to complete. My scattered life, the way out of here, and all the absences I haven't begun to account for. Thematically, there are some poems that are consistent across the collection. And one of the themes in Run for the Shadows is, the arc of time, which stretches beyond a human lifetime. And this poem alludes to that arc of time. It's called Relaxation Time. Give a number a name and mountains will flow. Nothing is solid, least of all water. It is all states, all boundaries. Before God, before the sun, the air, warmth, before splendor. It is slow, slower than life, without season or strife. It takes all things as it goes. There are no auguries in rivers when all things are river, all things the sea. The sea is homeless. The mountains have melted. All names are taken and then taken away. Drowned. Give the drowning a number. Still, it will be the only thing to call home. This next poem takes a first line from the American poet Carl Phillips's poem called Cortege. It's called If the Sea. If the sea could dream, and if the sea dreamt rain in rivers, it would rise in lines, vertical dashes erasing the air as it went. If the salt in the sea could dream, it would dream of blood, vessels, slowing current, damaged heart of the warming ocean. If, when the waves dream they are the thoughts of the drowning, they stun themselves into clarity and become sea glass. If the creatures of the sea dreamt of containment and spilling, of conquest over land and sky, what would they plant and how would it grow? If the sea could dream of hiding and scintillation, it would put down roots into the sacred floor, anchored until awake. This next is a long poem, but I've never read it. I'm looking forward to reading it over here for the first time. It's called Romance with Carnatic Vocal. Karna, these gestures the rain makes, it makes for you, first as violin, then as kanjira. It was meant to be intensely, but the rain forgets it falls as lightning does. It was meant to be not like rainbows that never knew they were on view, or they might have dressed for the occasion. It was meant to be romantic, like the kurinji which comes rarely, comes suddenly and brings no edges when it does, and instigates nothing in its name. And now what will the girl sing who sings to her friend about him as she waits? For when he walks down the streets and the street lights drop their orange flowers at his feet, flowers she will later pick and thread into unfading solar-powered garlands of Kanakambaram. Will she sing in 5 notes, tremolos and gamakas falling jaltarangili? Will her love be needles, Kanna, because you didn't come when you said you would, because you forget like the lightning? Or will her voice be like dancing, sweet clap of arched feet on smooth gray concrete, the smell of armpits and necks and smudge-streaked foreheads? Kanna, these gestures are theories. When you meet, forget rain, forget streets, feet, flowers. Listen, there is a tilana playing that you already know. Keep time the way she keeps it until you return. This next poem, my family doesn't like me to read some poems, but this one is for my mother and I'm going to read it for her regardless. She's watching in another room. Spirit animal for Amma. You recognize that moment when one part of you ribbons out to reside in the animal that came seeking something that you were willing to give. You gave more, and you've never been sure if that also was sought, and you just didn't know at the time. But the giving has made you young and the creature strong. She sits curled on the wall or the sill, belly full, an assumed dignity that comes more easily with practice. She is goddess, she is Bastet, and sometimes she remembers it. She was the runt of the litter, but she was intrepid, and so she was named, needed help, but accepted it as nothing more than her due. You watch, and maybe you learn how to accept without undue gratitude, how to be fearless, or at least to fake it, and how to fold antic youth within the stature of your age. She teaches you detachment, a still and watchful patience, endless grace. But there's always something left to learn, how to sharpen your claws, land on your feet, and find new lives to live. How are we doing for time? We're okay?
Yes, we're okay. We have some time. You have another 5 minutes, actually.
Hypothetical. The stinging lip, the ringing ear, the toppled light. This is not hypothetical. If you could kill with your bare hands, you said, bare hands. If you could kill with your bare hands the one you love and the world became a better place, this is hypothetical. A better world in words only. If you acted, if you did not act, if you rose, if you drowned, if you stayed or left, if you were stayed or deft, if you sliced time too thin for pain, if you provided a line and turned it into a rope, if you allowed yourself to hope, if you spidered into a corner, if you drew and quartered, if you cornered truth and flayed it alive, if you were surrounded by light, if your blind spot shone like a torch in the dark, if you loved with your bare hands, if you stung with your lips, if you toppled the light with your blind spot, if you drowned with your wings, if you stopped, if you walked away, all your life, hypothetical. I'll read one more poem and then maybe we can do a second round. Against the grain. Sleep comes like a blunt instrument in the days before. Rothko behind afternoon eyes. Colors, pulse. The agitated horizontal. Parallaxed, a third kind of eye. It turns inward. Words run, chased by a pill-wielding sleep. Struck, I vibrate, horizontal and unquiet. Thank you.
Thank you, Sridala. That was moving. Well, the second round sounds like a good idea. Do you want to begin with Sridala, or shall we do the cycle one more time and begin with Arundhathi? Arundhathi, you gave us a little more time. So maybe you can take a little more this time. And then we'll come back to Michelle and then end with Sridala. Is that okay, Sridala?
Yes.
I'm trying to figure what poem to read. And I think I'm going to read this particular one called Memo, which is, as I was listening to the poets today, it just reminded me of this strange, strange art that we practice. The art that seems to involve perennially living on the margins. And this is for all of us who do, and who are happy to do it. Memo. To choose the right table, the right quarrel, the right gaze. Not the conference of hungry eyes, but the fellowship of those who stand aslant, multilingual, listening. Their shadows four-footed, their wisdom angostura, their hearts green sun and groundwater. Those who still hope to cut through the fog, uncurdle the dream, but still weep unoriginally for the moon. Thank you.
One more, Arundhati?
Is that all right?
Yes, please. You had skipped
Okay,
one
very
longer one you
short one.
said. Please do read that.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to read one actually inspired now by Sridala's poem to her mother. I'm going to read a poem to mine, and it's a poem called When Landscape Becomes Woman.
Lovely.
I don't know how many of you know this moment. I often talk about it. It's the moment when one suddenly grows aware of a parent as an autonomous human being, not just as the background of one's life. When landscape becomes woman. I was 8 when I looked through a keyhole and saw my mother in the drawing room in her hibiscus silk sari, her fingers slender around a glass of iced cola. And I grew suddenly shy for not having seen her before. I knew her well, of course. Serene undulation of blue malmal, wrist serrated by thin gold bangle, the gentle convexity of mole on upper right arm, and her high arched feet, better than I knew myself. And I knew her voice like running water, ice cubes in cola. But through the keyhole at the grown-up party, she was no longer geography. She seemed to know how to incline her neck, just when to sip her swirly drink, and she understood the language of baritone voices and lacquered nails and words like emergency. I could have watched her all night. I discovered that keyholes always reveal more than doorways, that a chink in the wall is all you need to tumble into a parallel universe, that mothers are women. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Arundhati, from catabolic women to landscapes being women. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Michelle, can we invite you to read your last poem before we wind up? And then we'll move on to Sridala for one more too, please.
I'm going to read this poem for my mother, which I wrote for my mother also. It's called Beauty Tips. What words to fill the day? How to resist sentiment, balancing dream and the recklessly blue sky. Spring arrives with its allegro swell of trees, pollen, a novel open on the kitchen bench, breakfast aromas. Outside, the garden languors in laundry. Agapanthus, our swimming pool in need of chlorine, turns emerald green with insect wings, serrated jacaranda. What colour is truth? I dip the soft sable in powder to dust away speckles, cover shadows on my face and yesterday's mascara. Cleanse, tone, exfoliate, at all times brush downwards. I've disregarded my mother's beauty tips, her lessons in permanence or grace, her body slow, involuntary, her eyes widened by Parkinson's, a fine tremor in the jaw, while the heart arranges steady with belief and forgetting. I take comfort in this. Mother, show me the other way back, how the gravel is imprinted by wind, by human steps. Walk with me this evening, the sky crepuscular, rose tinted, the drifting scent of wild freesias like something strange, half known. You shuffle, sight weakened, wanting to observe the falling shingles, twigs, the scarcity of birds. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, for not having visited India. There's so much that you write about India, and it seems to be right there in your blood. Please come for our festival sometime when we have it live. Thank you. It was wonderful to hear your readings. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amita. I have visited India. I haven't lived in India.
Okay.
I just thought I'd clarify that.
All
So
right.
thank you very
Fine.
much. It's been a pleasure to be.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Over to you, Sridala.
Thank you, Amita. The last poem that I'm reading is just a long chant to flowers. It's called Annotations. Between the incantations of flowers, zinnia, wisteria, begonia, balsam, tacoma, tabibia, bahunia, saptaparni, between beds of future eggplants, and in the spaces between the jarul's leaves that live simultaneously in 2 seasons. In these spaces, I plant the names myrtle, cedar, willow, sycamore. These stones carry their distant perfume, fig and citron, walnut and birch. I place them like footnotes and citations on the margins of this garden. Feed it the mulch of nomenclature. Aspidistra, saxifrage, kurinji, samphire, rockweed, seagrass, a whiff of salt and snapping air, trapped and transported in these shells, placed along the river stones bordering Kaavya, Vadamalli, Duranta, geranium, Kanakambaram skies fallen amongst the absent peony and the gentian and the edelweiss and the takhale, blatant invitations to the hive-minders and the dreamers who can imagine the whole, know how to graft what is not there into what is with the barest extracts. Thank you.
Wonderful. You are 3 power ladies, really. It has been such a pleasure to hear you, the nuances, the depth, the experiences, and the woman in each one of you. Fabulous. Thank you. This was a wonderful poetry reading. I hope you enjoy the rest of the festival as well. And thank you for coming in digitally to be part of the festival. Thank you all and goodbye.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Michelle,
Thanks.
Sridala.
Thanks, Arundhati, Sridala, Amita.
described citizen driven. All of us who have worked to bring this festival out are people from within your all friend circles. We are all citizens and volunteers who have brought this out. This has been an extremely satisfying festival. What the last 2 days have been. Fantastic, a great lineup of speakers, events, talks, discussions, and an amazing audience. It's great to do this HLF. Thank you. HLF rock! Come rain or sunshine, HLF goes on!
Dear friends, welcome to the session. My mic is on, right? Welcome to the session, Lest We Forget 1984, with Kuljeet Singh, N.S. Madhavan, and Rachel Bari, who will be in conversation with Ishmeet Kaur Chaudhry. Let me briefly introduce you to the moderator and the speakers before going on to the book and its contents that will be at the center of discourse of this extremely disturbing and meaningful subject, lest we forget 1984. Ishmeet Kaur Chaudhry will be moderating this session, teaches at the Center for English Studies at the Central University of Gujarat, Gandhinagar. She is the editor of Patrick White, Critical Issues, published in 2014, co-editor of Violence, Subversion and Recovery, Women Writers from the Subcontinent and Around, published in fact with Rachel Bari in 2019, and the author of Texting the Scripture, Sri Guru Granth Sahib and the Visionary Poetics of Patrick White. She's the editor of Black November, Writings of the Sikh Massacres of 1984 and its Aftermath, which was published in 2019. Kuljeet Singh is an actor, an academic, founder of Atelier Theatre in New Delhi, and currently developing an arts residency in Himachal Pradesh. With profound interest in performance, curation, acting, directing, and writing, not necessarily in that order, he is at present spending time to develop 2 cinematic projects. N.S. Madhavan is a Malayalam novelist, short story writer, columnist, and former civil servant. In a literary career spanning more than 4 decades, Madhavan has published 5 collections of short story, a novel, a book of literary criticism, and a volume of assorted essays. Litanies of Dutch Battery, the English translation of his Malayalam novel, won the Crossword Prize for the best Indian novel in translation. His story, When Big Trees Fall, about the 1984 events following Indira Gandhi's assassination, has been made into a Hindi film, Kaya Taran. Rachel Bari is a professor of English and director of Prasararanga, the publication division of Kuvempu University in Karnataka. She's an author, editor, and creative writer, and finds her niche in poetry and short stories, which have been widely published. She loves to travel in search for good food and hopes to write about it soon. Her latest publication is Body, Mind and Other Poems, which came out in 2019. Her poems have been published in international anthologies like Paradise on Earth and For You, My Love. Black November. On October 31st, 1984, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi was assassinated by her Sikh bodyguards. Over the next 3 days, thousands of Sikh men, women, and children were humiliated, beaten, raped, burnt alive, and lynched by organized mobs across northern India, till down to Karnataka. 35 years later, only a handful of perpetrators have been convicted. Black November contains interviews, affidavits, short stories, plays, and poetry recounting the horrific violence, betrayals, and the denial of justice. At a time when caste and religious minorities in India are being systematically targeted yet again, this powerful anthology brings to light the empathy and unflinching honesty, the fear and alienation of a whole community torn apart by state-abetted violence and worn down by the subsequent slog for justice. Thank you all for joining this session. I will return to the screen at about 4:40 to take the audience questions. Ishmeet, do take us through the discourse on Lest We Forget 1984.
Thank you, Amita. Thank you so much. I have to begin by thanking HLF for doing this session. This book has been very dear. There's some projects which you do for yourself. And this was not done for any academic galore, but it was done for us. It was done for human beings around us. And it was something, and I would like to show the book. It was something which was done in order to voice the human concerns. I want to begin by talking a little bit about the struggle in publishing the book, and I want to bring on record a thank you note for Karthikeya Jain, who was with Speaking Tiger at that point and who agreed to do this book. He agreed at a time when about 40 to 45 publishers had refused the book. And interestingly, whenever I approached anybody to do the book, everybody had a story to tell me. And everybody would talk to me for about 2 hours and say that, okay, yes, it was horrific. I was here and I saw this with my own eyes. And this is how, it impacted me. And people took a lot of interest talking to me, and I'm thankful to them for doing that. But it's a question of doing the brave act of bringing this book out. And this young boy, Karthikeya, finally did it, while many others ultimately said, but it won't be possible for us to do. Nevertheless, even when they talked to me, I think those experiences which all of them shared, opened up one grave reality that, yes, this was an event which touched every person's life, whoever witnessed it. Now, 37 years down the line, where do we stand and how do we look at this subject? How much, if I speak as an insider, how much are we going to beat around the victimization card, ? Or is this experience giving us a learning, and what kind of a learning is it? Are we going to return back to it? Yes, we are going to return back to it. So the earlier stories, which we have in forms of interviews done by Uma Chakrabarti and Nanta Haksar in the book, they go around talking about what happened to people in 85 per se, how they were being resettled and what was their loss. And the new stories talked about human injustice, how 84 was not given the due justice. And 37 years down the line, when we look at 84, these stories do become stories of violence, but they're also stories of strength. For those who care, they tell us where we stand and how we're going to look at it. Before I open it to, other collaborators with me, this book also becomes a book which records the experience of my father, who opened up his story at an age when I was 34. So when 84 happened, I was 6. I have a blurred memory of watching outside the window when a Gurdwara next to our house was being thrown. And my brother stopping me from making all kinds of noises that I was making at that point of time, calling names to people who were doing that act. Because my friend and I were regular visitors to both the mandir and the Gurdwara every evening. And we just couldn't see this happening to this place, which was maybe not a religious place for us, but a plaything for us. And this friend's father, Ravindran Dev, came and saved us, and nothing happened to us. And our lives remain indebted to this journalist. But something very important, is that how many people could write about 84? And when very few people in the north could write about 84, we had Madhavan, who had written a powerful story in Malayalam. And this story became so important that it is alive with us even today. Not just that it was screened, as a film, but the story has been translated more than 2 times by different people. And every time we read the story, it moves across communities and across cultures. So Madhavan talks about, a Christian missionary that saves a sick woman and her child. And so I open up with Madhavan, and I would like to ask Madhavan, what is it that got you to actually, write the story, and how did you get to it? And maybe many more things which you would like to share with us about this.
Thank you, Ishmeet. Well, I'm very glad to be a part of this 360-degree experience book, fiction, non-fiction interviews. Well, I was right in the middle of the Sikh riots in Delhi when it happened. I was in central Delhi, what they call the Lieutenant Delhi. My house was there. And I could see with my own eyes the horrible things that were going around. I had to go and rescue a friend, a lady colleague who was trapped in their house. And so I had to walk through Dr. Rajendra Prasad Road. And I could see mobs were surrounding the house of Atal Bihari Vajpayee and telling that you are not Hindu enough. And the mobs were coming out of a particular party office. Then I saw the Janpat taxi stand being burned down, some valiant but losing fight being fought by the taxi drivers. So a couple of days after that, things were very difficult. So there was an organization in Delhi which was formed during the time of the riot. The office, a close friend, was one of the main organizers. He was also a civil servant. So I used to work in that for about 8 to 10 days. Used to visit gurudwaras where all the refugees or the temporary displaced people used to stay, and I could have a very almost first-hand kind of experience, even though for a Malayali who has spent about first 21 years of his life in Kerala is an imagined community. We don't have much the close experience with that. So well, all this stayed with me, but I had no plan to write about it, because at that time, personally, in my writing life, I was going through a hiatus. I won't call it a writer's block, but it lasted for about 10 years. So this story was actually written in 1991 when I started writing again, and it took a 7-year hibernation. But the events were deeply etched in my mind, and the whole tragedy always used to haunt me. In the introduction to the story, Ishmeet has narrated a personal experience of mine, which was I had to go and receive a friend's nephew from US who has come to the Delhi airport. Delhi airport at that time was not so like it is today. It had big pillars. So this boy was refusing to come out. And after all the passengers left, we could see him sitting crouched beneath a big pillar. And he was ashamed because they had to cut his parents had to cut his hair for his own safety in India. I mean, this is the kind of deep personal level traumas that people went through during that period. Also, I felt that more than what was happening in the streets, real horror was probably inside, because that was the perceived threat. So I go around this story as a story of the interior within a monastery, within a convent. So that is how this story was born. And then that's it.
Yeah. So Madhavan, where do you locate it now? Like, how do you look at the political discourse, in the present times,
Well, looking back, I mean, I could see, looking back after say 10 years or something, I could see that there was a deliberate planning behind this. Probably 1984 was the first time when writing was used as a political strategy, as a very cynical political strategy. The same template, that is, there is an incident followed by 2 days of absence of government, followed by, say, the recapture of the state by the government itself, which had abandoned it for some time. In this interregnum of 2 or 3 days, hundreds of people have died. The same template was repeated in Gujarat in 2002. And the results were also the same, because 1984 was followed by an election in which the Congress swept the elections. 2002, it again happened. This time BJP. So this was a very cynical political strategy. Why I say it with such conviction is that in Kochi, we don't have more than 10 or 15 or 20 Sikh families. We have a Gurudwara. The Sikhs in Kochi are mostly in the automobile parts business. Their shops were looted. The Gurudwara was burned down, was taken down. For apparently no reason. So there was a central messaging system which had gone down the political line for the people in Kerala to act in such a way. There's absolutely no animosity or anything towards Sikhs in Kerala, because the number is so minuscule. So there is a central messaging system, there is a strategy, there is cynicism, there is absolutely blood-curdling quest for political reward. Then it again happened in many parts of the country with suitable electoral rewards. Lastly, probably major incident was 2013 Muzaffarnagar. I mean, that has split Western UP into two. Now, probably the wounds are healed after the farmers' struggle. So this is the main takeaway, how riot was used as a political strategy and how it reinforced the parties in power and how such things cannot be ruled out in future. But probably now writing is not necessary because so much hatred and polarization has already been achieved and electoral rewards are being reaped out of it. So I think 1984 marked a very sad beginning of a political chapter in India, with which we are still continuing, and it's our burden. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madhavan. And I think, with this, like one very important thing that kind of always troubles me is the very question that how come there is a breakdown of machinery at so many times. And one thing, like, which hasn't quite been worked on and which is still a miss, when we talk about 84, is what happened to the women per se. And it won't be wrong to say that we have lost the individual stories, of women, because women did not talk about it. There were no official FIRs recorded regarding, the mutilation and violation of the women bodies. At the same time, those families, this I'm bringing out from Pratiksha Bakshi's account, that those families which had even a single male who survived did not talk about how the women were raped, because they felt that, it would add to the misery of the man that he was not able to save his women. And so now, there's also this generation which is passing away. Already a lot of people were killed. Those who survived are also very old. And many of them don't even want to talk about these women experiences. There was a woman I had interviewed, and I wanted to talk to her children. And I could still see the way she was protecting her children. And she was saying, okay, you ask us whatever you want to, but please don't reach out to our children. They've seen enough. Let them be. I'll tell you what you want. So they didn't want me to touch their new generations, and of course I didn't want to go beyond my limits. And but there's a pain that now these histories. I mean, this is a kind of a history, and these experiences of women. The attempt to record women's experiences. We did think about writing about women, and Professor Bari, who was working with me very closely at that point and was listening to, everything that I was sharing with her, penned two very, very powerful stories. So, ma'am, I'd like to invite you to talk about your stories and, talk about women, and maybe also how do we reach out to women through literature?
Yeah, thank you, Ishmeet. I should also take this opportunity to thank HLF for making me a part of this. My experience in terms of 1984 is very meager in the sense I had just, graduated, and we had gone on a picnic about 10 kilometers away from the hometown that I live in. When suddenly that was a time when we had no phones, cell phones were out of question, and there was no way we could have got to know what had happened. But then immediately one of our friends came by on a bike there and then told us that this is what has happened, you all should get back home soon. So all of us took a bus and then got back home. And of course, I was never a witness to what was taking place. And even in Karnataka, I think whatever happened, whatever horrible incidents happened, it was at Bidar. Bidar can give us a lot more experiences of what they really went through. There was no experience of mine. But then when Ishmeet asked me to write, it was for me an eye-opener, because until then I had not realized the horrible nature of this kind of an incident which took place, personal experiences. She spoke to me so much, about what was going on and how she went about collecting information and what are the problems that she went through when she tried to collect information, and the constant denials that she had from the publishing houses. Now, this was not an easy thing. And when I wrote, what I have written is actually a short story about a woman being physically violated, but then it is emotional and very painful also. This is written from 4 perspectives. There are 4 perspectives there. So one is from the perspective of the parents, one is from the victim herself, one is from the law and order, the police, and one is from the journalist. And these are just a few of the perspectives that I've written, because you can have as many perspectives as you want. But it is a physical violation. It is a rape of a girl, of a young girl who trusts society, who trusts her neighbors, and she is violated not only by the society in which she trusts, and she is violated by the police force, by her neighbor also. I mean, that is true for every rape that takes place in this country and maybe worldwide. Okay, that is something that I do not want to focus on much. But then one thing that Ishmeet, that you said was, you titled this session as Lest We Forget. We cannot forget. Because I am reading up on neuroscience now, and I feel, and the experiments are going on, where it is said that we, pass on our memories through our genetics to the next generation. So it is epigenetic. So if that is the case, what are we doing to our tomorrows? We want to forget, we cannot forget. We are passing on. When you narrated an incident and told me that, the mother said that you don't talk to them, we will give you the information. Actually, it is already passed on. And as a minority belonging to this situation today in this country and what we are going through, I think the whole thing is being replayed, isn't it? It is not just a physical violation that takes place. It is not just a rape that takes place. It's a memory that is going to haunt us. And this memory cannot be erased. It's very different from what is being said, you should set apart one day to remember the horrors of partition. No, that is not what is being said. It's a memory that we are going to live with, and it's going to be a very, very painful memory. So what are we going to give to the, women? How do we ask them to cope? You said about, victimization. How long are we going to play the victim card? We are not playing the victim card. We are looking for answers. Now, are we going to get answers here at all? Is something that I'm not very sure of, because the 1984 is an incident. 2002 is an incident. 2013 is an incident. How many incidents are we going to have? How many are we going to talk about? And when will this erasure take place? And if it does it take place at all? So this is just an imaginative rendering, and even imaginative rendering for me was very painful, because one, you're talking about the violation of a woman's body. It is not only the violation of a woman's body, it is the breaking down of a system of beliefs that we have in the so-called civilized society that we live in. So how do we contribute? I mean, how does art heal? Does art heal at all? Maybe for me, it is a catharsis. Somewhere I find an outlet. But what for those women who cannot do it? We come out with a book. Yeah, maybe we are the reading, writing sort. What about those men and women who cannot write about it? How do they deal with it? Those experiences matter to me. Yeah, some of them can talk to you like you have narrated in the book. You know, every time you went somewhere, people always said, oh, you come here again with a camera, right? You come here again with a book and pen, you try to narrate our experiences. How many of those experiences can we really bring out into the open? My questions would be, will erasure take place at all? Will healing take place at all? Because the next generation is already ready, the memory is carried on. Because if you forget that, you are not what you are today. You don't forge an identity. Your identity is forged by that, by these incidents. And this should make you stronger, not make you. And that is my simple contribution to this, work that Ishmeet had. But Ishmeet permit me to read something, because for a long time, I was going through this writer's block. And I did speak to a friend of mine, and when you brought this up of the HLF, suddenly something came to my mind. I've written it down. I just want to read it. It's a very short poem.
Sure,
it is titled Hair It Is. Growing up, hair was the crowning glory. Short, long, curly, straight, all was acceptable. Deck it with flowers, colorful pins, scarve it, paint it. Although dead, it came alive in colors, in braids, tied, let loose, bunned, coiled, it adorned. 1984 changed. That thought, that vision, that truth, hair was victimized, tortured, politicized, symbol to destroy. How many more symbols are we yet to annihilate? The mosque, the church, the past, a culture. Because whatever happened in 1984 has a continuity. I mean, it is happening even to this day. So you find a culture, a history which is being erased, a culture which wants us to forget something that we've been through. I don't know how we are going to deal with this, but these are open questions.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And what a lovely poem. And it triggers my memory of Kuljeet's play. But just one more second before we go to Kuljeet, I would also like to tell everybody, the story that Professor Risaldar penned. The protagonist is not even a Sikh. So you know how this discourse extends that, when there is violence around us, we are not only threatening a particular community, it's a threat to every citizen of the country. And Kuljeet did a wonderful play called Sikh Kebab. And we were quite fortunate to have it, in our university. And as ma'am talks about hair, Kuljeet's play also opens with a very, very ugly and a grotesque, experience is what I should say, not even an image, but an experience. He made all of us walk, through the fallen cut hair, which was spread around in the corridor. And none of us wanted to do that.
I must butt in, Ishmeet. Now, that was one of the plays which mesmerized me so totally. I mean, it was, I'm so happy, Kuljeet, that I'm able to meet you. I mean, that was a beautiful piece of, play that came through, and that hit me on the face. That is the kind of work that we need. We need to really show it to people. I'm so glad that I could see it.
And it was, I say it was ugly, but it was equally comical. And Kuljeet brought us a lot of things, there's a band who gets arrested, and they are not, it's called a Singh band. So they are not actually the Sikh Singh, they are the UPK Singh. So ye wala Singh ya wo wala Singh. And it still resonates. I could also translate that play to my joy. And there have been nuances of translation in that play, which we would, take up after we listen to Kuljeet. Something very important is that why did he call it Sikh Kebab? So Kuljeet, all yours.
Thank you, Ishmeet. It was in 2004 when I formed Atelier, the theatre company, which I'm still continuing it's based out of Delhi, but we travel a lot. And my first production, which I picked up as a part of Atelier Repertory, was Goodbye Blue Sky. So Goodbye Blue Sky being a symbol of peace. We were talking about violence in India. And it was in 2004 and 5 when I was making it. And Godhra happened just 2 years before that. So I was perplexed with Godhra, figuring out the history of violence in India from 1947 to 1984 to 2002, and a lot of other instances in between. And I came across a poem called Sentalis Se Chaurasi Tak, from 47 to 84. So it's a story of a Punjab Kaur who says that I lost my husband in 47, I lost my son in 84. मेरा कौर 47 में कटा, पंजाब का बेटा 84 में कटा, अब मैं पंजो रिफ्यूजन रह गई हूँ. That totally shook me, left, right, center. I would like to mention here, I was in Uttar Pradesh as a kid when 84 happened. And I was playing cricket outside with everyone, and my mother asked me to come inside. And I did not know why. We were safe. Nothing happened to our family in Uttar Pradesh. I was at Rampur, a small town in UP. When I came to Delhi as a school student, college student, post-college, I started this theater company. When I came across a lot of other things which disturbed me. And as an artist, I was figuring out how to negotiate with this violence around. And I started collecting material. Along with my other collaborators in 2004, 5, 6, we created a play called Goodbye Blue Sky, wherein a young Sikh actor on the stage is being asked to stop the play because the prime minister of the nation is being killed outside. So it was a play which gets stopped by goons. That was the beginning of this thought. Almost 10 years later, rather 8, 9 years later, I came across Professor Uma Chakravarti's book, The Delhi Riots, 3 Days in the Life of a Nation, which is known to all of us. Very well documented book. And while I was reading it, I came across a page which mentions this joke. What would you call a burning Sikh? And it was a joke quite popular in South Delhi schools. And it's mentioned in the book itself. What would you call a burning Sikh? And the answer is Sikh kebab. And I thought, it's been long we had been talking about 84 as a kind of heart-wrenching, painful story. And we slightly changed the curve and check if it works better. I tried doing something called tragic comedy. I did not portray it as something wherein I'm just sort of cheek pukar kar raha hoon, but I wanted to make it funny. And is it really funny? So the play would start with this question asked by a stand-up comedian. He would crack some 4, 5, 6 jokes, Sardar jokes, and the last joke would be, what would you call a burning Sikh? He would ask the audience. And then he would come at the end after the story is completed. So, Ishmeet, as you asked the topic, I mean, the title of the play, I took this title from Professor Uma Chakravarti's book and named it Sikh Kebab. A lot of people thought it's a comedy because the title itself is funny, Sikh Kebab, as the title of a play, what it's going to give to us. And then along with my team at Atelier Repertory, we were also designing it. What would be the experience when the audience is going to enter from the corridor to the auditorium? And that's where we thought a person who's so scared that he's shaving all the time. He has shaved his beard, he has shaved his head, he's shaving pubic hair, he's shaving his body hair. So the image of hair is so terrifying in his head that he has nothing else but to shave. So that person would come again and again and again, asking us to think, ponder, do something. I mean, as you see, I mean, I do not know how to, as an artist, how to come to terms with this horror and pain. But whenever I come across incidences of lynching, incidences of murder, I mean, these images, which did not happen to me directly, but happened to people around me, come to my mind. And I think it's my ethical duty to respond to it. And I think Sikh Kebab came as a response to the same. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel that, this image of this man who's constantly shaving his hair, his head is bald and he's constantly shaving his hair. In fact, as we looked at the audience, people were also laughing, at that image. They were uncomfortable, but yes, they were laughing at, his obsession with the hair, and that did somewhere mark. Um, and then, when I got back home, I started thinking about, the capacity to laugh. How can one laugh at such a horrific incident or such a gruesome incident? And the beauty of it is that, when the pain is internalized so much, when you've learned to live with it, it is then that you can laugh. And the community has been such that, it's taken up everything that it got in the history. And the community knows how to internalize the pain, and therefore, laughter, I mean, there is an ability to laugh, at whatever has happened to you. And if there are attempts to put you down, that actually do not work, because you hit back, and you hit back not just by shouting or by crying, but even by laughing. So it's such a powerful tool to do. And of course, there was a huge standing ovation, for about maybe more than 2-3 minutes, which was great. And so, a couple of more things, like, when we look at this vocabulary of, I prefer calling it Chaurasi now, because Chaurasi in itself, has become a term, which defines this event. So this whole vocabulary, when we talk about this incidents as riots or carnage or, pogrom, or, there are memorandums, in different courts to call it even genocide. And some judges have used the term as genocide. So I do remember, I mean, mostly the critiques or the thinkers talk about these subjects. But interestingly, one of the women said, the women whom I was interviewing, the survivor women in the Tilak Bihar Widows Colony, she was not much educated, but she said, this term, when riots, we say riots, riots are accidental. It just happens. They're never planned, right? But these were not riots. This was a very well organized, pogrom. And she says that, so we're not going to call it a riot simply. And so there's something much more deeper in there. And how are we going to, take it up? And so maybe if somebody wants to respond around this vocabulary and how language works,
Yeah, I mean, it was state sponsored. We all are aware of it. It was so well planned. I think over a period of time, repeating 84, Chaurasi as riot is not just incidental. It's been created. And the only way to contest this vocabulary is to use the right word, which is pogrom. And I think a lot of scholars, cultural activists, they have been speaking about it. At 84, like 2002, they are not just incidents. It's not a kind of family, one family fighting against another family. It was a state which was planning and strategically planning, as Madhavan sir also pointed out in the beginning, to figure out how to win the upcoming elections and what is going to be the one-up man strategy in order to win those elections. Unethical completely brutal and shameless, but yes, it was done by both the major parties of our country, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think if we expect some change, we have to open this discourse to different communities, to different people, and all of us have to come together, talking about it. So, keeping silent about it will serve no purpose, and therefore we have to, represent as much as possible, right? And I think I do see Amita now, and maybe that's the
So,
note where we could
yeah,
stop. Yeah.
just the continuation of that. Vijay has posted, Dr. Vijay Kumar, my colleague from the Literature Festival, has posted that was 1984 perhaps a template? Was it put to use later again in 92 and 2002? And I mean, this is almost a redundant question, but yes, we do know that this was a pogrom, and I think we should call it that. There is no doubt. I don't know how many of you witnessed that 2 days ago, the German Parliament commemorated the Day of Remembrance, and you had people all across Germany. The parliament, of course, commemorated. There was the Jewish survivor who was called in and talked about it, and there was music by Jewish composers. We have to, in order to at all come to terms with it, do it collectively and do it loudly. There is no option but to as Mr. Madhavan called, that this is a burden that we have, and it's something that we have to deal with. Over the history, and again I go back to Germany for very obvious reasons, because we understand where we are in India today, and we understand what history has done across the world. The slogan that is to forgive but not forget. And I think that is a crucial slogan that we must espouse. So whether it is tragic comedy, and Kuljeet, I would love to see the play that you talk about, and I think rongte khade ho jate hain when you talk about the hair, and the shaving. It's maybe funny, but it is a very serious issue, and this must be collectively commemorated. And when I was young and I grew up, I mentioned this just at the beginning. When I grew up in Delhi, my mother would tell me, and I stayed there for about 10 years. She says, "Okay, जब कोई गाड़ी बुलाओ, टैक्सी है या ऑटो बुलाओ, अगर उसमें अपने सरदार भाई है ना, तो बिना झिझक चढ़ जाओ, बिना झिझक. Don't even think twice." And that was what we have just had shattered, from the reverse side. We have shattered a bonding, an affection, a safety, security, and protective cell that we all lived in. So these are issues. Ishmeet, tell me, when you were doing this book and you collected a huge quantity of data, how did you feel? I mean, this is very difficult subject to write.
Yeah, I do understand the question, because one of my friends came home and I gave her the book and she said, "I can take it, and I will take it, but I will not read it." Oh. And she said, this is going to be extremely painful for me, and I am not going to instill this pain on my own self. This was a very, very dear friend of mine. She loved that I'd done this. She respected it. I have no doubts about her, but this is what she said. And she asked me the same question, कि तेरे को दुख नहीं हुआ ये करते हुए? I feel that, coming from a family which had seen partition, and the stories which my grandfather had narrated when we were children. So actually, I am completely unaware of a lot of folk stories of Punjab because we were staying in Himachal. And the stories which grandparents shared were stories of violence, stories of being uprooted, stories of nostalgia, stories of loss. So that was, I think, we had already internalized violence within us. And that somewhere gave me some strength to work on this. But more than anything else, I think I was really, really indebted to my friend's father. And I have and this could have been the best way to do it. The third thing was my father's own pain, and even like now the book is out, and there's a second book which Orient Black Swan is doing. It's a more of an academic book which hopefully we will see this year. And still my father told me that once you come home this time, you record my experience, I have more to add. And so there was there has also been an ethical responsibility which my father took on to himself. So when he told me the story, I asked him where was the story for all these years, and he said, you had a wonderful experience of a friend saving you, and I did not want to spoil that with my experiences. Now you have grown up. And I really want to ask one question to everybody. I mean, I want to know, where am I? I'm an Indian. This is a beautiful, beautiful country. So much to give us, right? We live with so many cultures. We have so many languages with us. I am now in Gujarat. I was brought up in Himachal. My husband is who was brought up in Vishakhapatnam. He is one of those rare species of the Sikhs who speaks Telugu, right? My daughter is being brought up in Gujarat. And we go to temples, we go to mosques, we go to churches, we go everywhere. I'm so much an important part of all the Sundarkans happening around my house. Every neighbor, if we do kirtan, we call people. I mean, what identities are we talking about? What is this divide about? What kind of a world are we living in, and what are we making around us? When are we going to begin questioning it? How long will it take for us to begin questioning it? And I say that with a very painful heart. Somebody comes up and says, all right, this woman working in this university they would label me as belonging to a terror organization. Oh, this is not new to me, right? We've grown up with it. We've lived with it. It doesn't matter to me. You call me whatever you want to, right? So but how long is my question? What kind of a world are we going to give to our children? Right? Where does my teenager daughter find her what is her place? She's somebody who doesn't know Punjabi, but she knows Gujarati. So where are we? She's somebody who excels in Hindi, who gets maximum marks in Hindi. So how are we to define? And the only word that I know is Indian, and it's a beautiful, beautiful country. Don't spoil it. We are a part of it.
Ishmeet, I'm with you there, because I grew up in a situation where, once me and my friend, when we were playing around, we were thirsty and we walked into a house to, drink water. The lady of the house opened the door and she gave water to my friend, but not to me, right? Because she was a Marathi Brahmin and I was a Syrian Christian. So I was a Mlecha and I was not supposed to drink water. I didn't feel anything. I didn't know anything. I came back and narrated the whole incident to my father. And my father just told me, it's all right. You can always have water at home. He could have poisoned my mind. He didn't. We go back to our roots. Okay, and that is what we believe in, and that is what we go ahead with. In spite, despite everything that is going around us, we have our roots somewhere else.
Yes, it's the
and no amount,
the
amount of branch cutting there is going to happen.
It's the largesse that will do it. That's correct. Mr. Madhavan, would you like to add a line? And then Kuljeet ji, before we close. You're on mute, sir.
Well, I was struck by your description of the German parliament. This is precisely what the 1984 is looking for. It hasn't got a closure. So long as it doesn't have a closure, for example, in the recent Kisan agitation, Sikhs were again threatened. Yaad rakhiye Chaudhry. So unless we move towards a closure for which no effort is seen from major political party, I think to reuse the word again, this will be a burden on our soul.
Right, very true. Kuljeet ji?
If I'm permitted, maybe I'll speak a few lines from a poem by a wonderful young poet, Naveen Chaudhry. I collected this work during the COVID time when I started writing Dastane Chaurasi. I shared it with Ishmeet. It's a work in progress. Naveen Chaudhry says, "Ik sadak pe khoon hai, तारीख तपता जून है, एक उंगली है पड़ी और उस पे जो नाखून है, नाखून पे है एक निशान, अब कौन होगा हुक्मरान, जब चुन रही थी उंगलियां, ये उंगली भी तब थी वहां." That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This was a very crucial discourse, and I agree, Ishmeet, we have to let this continue. It is really for us to see that we reach a stage where all of us hold up that placard and say, Remembrance Day, you know, and I wish us all healing and strength, and thank you so much for being with us at Hyderabad Literary Festival. This has enriched us for sure. Thank you.
Thank you for doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.